Chapter 26-22. When Yunhua said this, her eyes dodged, as if someone had seen through her hidden thoughts for many years. As she spoke, she reached out to hold the door, wanting to lock Yunjian outside. Just as the door was slowly closed by Yunhua until there was only a thin gap left, a long slender leg suddenly stretched out. A slender, straight and beautiful leg suddenly stretched out and pressed against the crack of the door, preventing Yunhua from completely closing and locking the door. What's going on? Why are you so strange? It's fine if you go to someone else's house and spout nonsense, but you still want to barge into someone else's house. Just by looking at Yunhua for the first time, Yunhua was not an unreasonable shrew. As a person, she had a bottom line. Yunjian's words had probably touched Yunhua's bottom line, causing her to panic. It was the feeling of a secret that had been hidden for many years suddenly being exposed in front of others. It was like staying up late to play with your phone in school and suddenly being discovered by your mother. Yunhua felt that way at this moment. Yunjian, who had used her foot to block the gap of the door, looked up slightly. Her eyes were cold. Only then did Yunhua look straight into Yunjian's eyes. Her heart involuntarily trembled. Her gaze was too cold. As long as her memorial tablet is placed in the ancestral hall and her name is recorded in the family tree, I'll leave. This was Yunjian's last wish to fulfill for Shinji. Seeing Yunjian's unrelenting expression, Yunhua was afraid that this matter would blow up and cause the old master and old madam in charge of the family to rush out when they heard the news. Yunhua gulped. She opened the door and walked out. Then, she closed the door halfway and looked around. Seeing that no one was passing by, Yunhua counted 500 yuan from her pocket and placed it on Shinji's urn that Yunjian was holding. She pleaded with Yunjian, "It's not like I'm not a mother. Our Cheng family is only allowed to have boys and not girls. If anyone gives birth to a daughter, they will be looked down upon by their husbands and bullied by their mothers-in-law and fathers-in-law." I was also at my wit's end. When the child went missing, I was also afraid. On the day she left, I followed her all the way. In the end, I watched her leave with a man who gave her bread and felt relieved. You can keep the money. I really don't have any money. If the daughter-in-law of the Cheng family hides money, she will be punished according to the family rules. I know I've let the child down, but I have no choice but to ask you for help. Shinji's surname was Cheng. The Cheng family that Yunhua had mentioned was Shinji's family. Yunhua's lips had been trembling ever since he heard the news of Shinji's death. But after marrying into a feudalistic family, she didn't dare to get a divorce and was even more afraid of losing everything she had now. As the saying goes, a married woman obeys her husband. Yunhua herself was not a person who favored boys over girls. Because she was afraid that she would not live well in her husband's family, she could only obey her in-laws. Yunhua thought that if he gave Yunjian money, Yunjian would leave. Unexpectedly, Yunjian held Shinji's ashes with one hand and threw the money back to her with the other. She said coldly, "I don't want money. I just want her to enter the Cheng family's ancestral hall." Yunjian's persistence made Yunhua anxious. Just as Yunhua was panicking, old Master Cheng's strong male voice sounded from behind the door. "Who do you want to enter my Cheng family's ancestral hall?" The half-closed door behind him was opened. An old man in his 70s walked out of the courtyard majestically with a walking stick. His eyes were sharp and his eyes were sparkling. He had the aura of a feudal landlord in ancient times. Behind him was a large group of descendants, all of whom were men. Old Master Cheng looked at Yunjian with a dignified aura. Under everyone's gaze, he repeated to Yunjian, "My Cheng family doesn't have a biological daughter wandering outside. Moreover, she's just a woman and not the mistress of the family. How can she have the right to enter my Cheng family's ancestral hall?" Chapter 26-23. Moreover, who knows what's in the urn you're holding? The old man's words carried a strong aura. Even those who didn't know the situation would have an illusion that the old man's words were reasonable after hearing the old man's righteous words. If a family favored sons over daughters, there would be no peace if a daughter was born. If both her father-in-law and mother-in-law favored sons over daughters, then it would be over. And you can never imagine how frightening it is when a family that retains a feudal mindset values their sons. In fact, none of the old women Yunjian had met in the countryside could compare to how much the Cheng family valued their sons. In the Cheng family, If a daughter-in-law couldn't give birth to a son, the Cheng family's men had the right to find another woman to have a son with. Even the country's policies couldn't do anything about it. Under Grandpa Cheng's threatening gaze, the younger generation of the Cheng family, including Yun Hua, all thought that Yun Jian would turn and leave. However, Yun Jian strode forward expressionlessly. She didn't even look at Grandpa Cheng as she walked past him and the rest of the Cheng family into the courtyard. I said, I want her to be buried in the Cheng family's ancestral hall. Cheng Ziyin, born on a rainy night on August 6, 1984. I want her to be buried in the Cheng family's most glorious way. Her memorial tablet will be placed in the Cheng family's ancestral hall, and her name will be recorded in the Cheng family's genealogy. Yun Jian held Shenji's urn and spoke one word without taking a step. She was very calm. Every word was like the cold conversation she had with Shenji in the past. Her heavy words were spoken for everyone present to hear. Cheng Ziyin was Shenji's original name. She had long abandoned her surname and name. Today, Yun Jian had picked up her surname and name and brought her back to the Cheng family. She would fulfill Shenji's wish and bury her as an ordinary person. Yun Jian's words were even more imposing and arrogant than Grandpa Cheng's. Everyone in the Cheng clan heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. She thought that after Yun Jian's words, Old Master Cheng would fly into a rage again. Unexpectedly, the old man's eyes widened as he stared at Yun Jian. How do you know that on the rainy night of August 6, 1984, Yun Hua gave birth to a child? Those who knew about this matter had been dismissed from the Cheng family for more than 10 years. Besides, isn't that child a stillborn? Why? There were very few people who knew about what had happened more than 20 years ago. But how old was Yun Jian? She could actually remember something that happened more than 20 years ago. Find out everything. Plop. Just as the old man was puzzled, Yun Hua suddenly knelt in front of everyone. That child is mine. They're mine. I gave birth to a girl, Ziyin. Ziyin is my biological daughter. I didn't adopt her later on. She's my biological daughter. Yun Hua suddenly burst into tears. 20 years ago, Yun Hua gave birth to Shenji. When she realized that she had given birth to a girl, she found a nanny to bring back a stillborn baby and lied to the Cheng clan that the child had died. Less than 2 days later, he adopted another child. The child he adopted was actually Yun Hua's biological son, Shenji. Later, Shenji couldn't take it anymore. She ran away from home and never came back. Everyone in the Cheng clan was stunned by Yun Hua's sudden admission. I've let my child down. But what can I do? What can I do? If you knew that I gave birth to a girl, would I still have a foothold in the Cheng clan? Wonderful Book House. Chapter 26-24. Yes, if the fact that Yun Hua gave birth to a girl was exposed, the Cheng family would only think that she was a sow who couldn't give birth to a son. In such a feudal family, if you were judged to be a woman who couldn't give birth to a son, your husband would leave you for another woman. Everyone in the family would look down on you. Yun Hua chose to abandon Shenji for her own selfish reasons. She didn't value boys over girls, but she had married into a family that valued boys over girls. She had no other choice. In ancient times, there were even more families like the Cheng family, so it wasn't strange. Was this the corruption of morals, or the lack of humanity? At first, Yun Hua wouldn't say anything even if she was beaten to death. But since Yun Jian said this, Yun Hua understood her father-in-law. She knew that with the old man's personality, he would definitely investigate what happened in the past. Once it was found out, her life would be even more difficult. So for this, Yun Hua chose to admit it herself. Yun Hua's husband, who was Shinji's biological father, was also stunned when he heard Yun Hua's words. The old man and everyone else present were shocked. No one expected that as the child's biological mother, Yun Hua would do such a cruel thing for her own selfish desires. I don't care about your family's matters, but I'm going to meditate in the ancestral hall today. Yun Jian held Shinji's urn. After hearing the arguments around her, she didn't move at all. She walked towards the Cheng family's ancestral hall. Stop. The old man didn't even have time to resolve the matter. When he heard Yun Jian's words, he rushed to Yun Jian with his walking stick. He blocked Yun Jian's path and said to Yun Jian, even if she really is my granddaughter, I won't allow her to enter the ancestral hall. The Cheng family has its own rules. In the Cheng family, only the men of the Cheng family and the woman who is the mistress of the Cheng family can enter the ancestral hall. This sentence was clearly blatant discrimination against women. All the men of the Cheng family could enter the ancestral hall and be worshipped by the future generations, but only the mistress of the Cheng family had the right to enter the ancestral hall. Yun Jian's eyes were cold. But this wasn't the end. The old man saw that Yun Jian was listening to him, so he added, "Since ancient times, the men went out to earn money while the women stayed at home. If a woman can be like a man and make a career outside, I have nothing to say about her entering the ancestral hall. But in the 600 years of our Cheng family, there has never been a record of a woman being able to make a name for herself outside." So, the old man meant that apart from giving birth to children, to get married, and to follow the mistress of the Cheng family, there was no other purpose. Because that was how the Cheng family had been for the past 600 years. The old man thought that Yun Jian would stop when she heard that. But the old man was the old man. The old man was stunned, but he nodded. "Yes. But she's a girl. How can she?" Just as the old man finished speaking, Yun Jian said coldly, "Come out." Right after she said that, a lot of people appeared on the roof of the courtyard house. They jumped down from the roof and stood beside Yun Jian. Everyone in the Cheng family was shocked. Just when everyone was at a loss, Yun Jian suddenly said to everyone, "They are all Shenji's men. The ace of the world's largest assassin organization, codenamed Shenji. His net worth is $39 billion US. Is this enough to enter the Cheng family's ancestral hall?" Chapter 26-25. He was the ace of the world's largest assassin organization. He had a total of $39 billion US under his name. With this kind of achievement, let alone entering the Cheng family's ancestral hall, it wouldn't be a problem for him to enter and leave the Cheng family's ancestral hall tens of thousands of times. The Cheng family had never had an outstanding descendant with a total of $39 billion US under his name. If that was converted to RMB, it would be trillions. They hadn't even seen what a billion RMB looked like. With Yun Jian's words and the fact that they had been hiding in every corner of the courtyard house since the beginning, no one had noticed their sudden appearance. They were like assassins in ancient times who came and went like ghosts. Everyone in the Cheng family, including Old Master Cheng, was stunned. Their faces were pale. What did you say?" Old Master Cheng yelled as he slammed his walking stick on the ground. The old man was in disbelief at Yun Jian's words. "This old thing is Sister Ji's grandfather?" Just as Old Master Cheng was about to think that Yun Jian had found someone to pretend to be Shenji's subordinate so that Shenji could enter the Cheng family's ancestral hall, a man who had just jumped down from the courtyard house's roof pulled off the black mask covering his face. It revealed the face of a 17 or 18-year-old Shota boy. Although he looked 17 or 18-year-old, he was actually 25 years old, even older than Shenji. The only reason he called Shenji Sister Ji was because he worked for her. This man with a youthful face was named Huan. Huan looked at Old Master Cheng without any trace of politeness and called him old thing in front of everyone. When the people around heard how Huan addressed Old Master Cheng, they felt a faint wave of shock and fear. The old man was known to be a stern man in the village. If this young man who looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old was just someone Yun Jian found to put on an act for everyone to see, then why waste time talking to this old thing? My sister Ji is invincible in the assassin circle. She's not even willing to enter the Cheng family's ancestral hall. If she refuses again, I'll *King find someone to bomb their ancestral hall. Huan glanced at Old Master Cheng and the others. As he spoke, he lifted the corner of his shirt and took out a revolver. He pointed the muzzle at Old Master Cheng and was about to put his finger on the trigger. "This gun isn't fake, is it?" A man from the Cheng family who thought he was very smart and had studied guns in books looked at the gun in Huan's hand from afar and couldn't help but speak. *CK. I'll show you the power of this gun." Huan heard that his gun was doubted. He was so angry that he pulled the trigger. Before anyone in the Cheng family's gun, Old Master Cheng, masters, Huan's, master. Everyone from the Cheng family stood rooted to the ground. Gun. It was a real gun. It was a real gun that could shoot bullets. Everyone in the Cheng family turned pale with fright as they watched the bullet fly towards Old Master Cheng's head at lightning speed. A glint flashed in everyone's eyes. In the next second, the bullet collided with a butterfly knife in mid-air. The butterfly knife collided with the bullet, and the friction between the two created a violent spark in the air. In the next second, the impact was offset and it stopped in mid-air. Then both of them fell to the ground. Seeing this shocking scene, everyone couldn't stay calm. Everyone looked in the direction of the butterfly knife. Yun Jian walked to the spot where the butterfly knife had collided with the bullet in front of everyone and picked it up from the ground. She turned to the Cheng family like nothing had happened and spoke in her usual icy tone. "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Don't waste my time. You can't afford it. Don't think that she's dead. Even if she's an ace assassin, she can't do anything to you. I'm sorry, but I came from the same place as her." Chapter 26-26. No matter how much the Cheng family didn't believe that Shen Ji was an ace assassin from the world's largest assassin organization, or that Yun Jian said that Shen Ji's net worth was 39 billion yuan, they had to believe it now. Huan had a gun. A real gun. And Yun Jian said that Huan was Shen Ji's subordinate. This was enough to prove the authenticity of Shen Ji's identity. Because no ordinary person could carry a gun at any time. The Cheng family did feel lucky for a moment because Shen Ji had died. After all, he was already dead. No matter how powerful she was in the past, she couldn't do anything to them. But before they could relax, Yun Jian used a butterfly knife to block a bullet. She used a knife. She did things that ordinary people couldn't even dream of. She even stood there and boasted that she came from the same place as Shen Ji. Then wouldn't Yun Jian's identity be the same as Shen Ji's? Ha! Huan scoffed when he saw how Yun Jian had saved the stubborn old man of the Cheng family with her help. "Go and move the things in." Then, just as old Master Cheng, Yun Hua, and everyone else in the Cheng family trembled in fear, Yun Jian's indifferent voice rang out. "Move them in?" "Move what?" Everyone present was bewildered. But just as she said that, the people who had been waiting outside for a long time came in carrying box after box of funerary items. Ignoring the Cheng family, Yun Jian held Shen Ji's urn and placed the memorial tablet she had prepared for Shen Ji at the highest spot in the ancestral hall under the Cheng family's shocked gazes. Wait. We've discussed it and agreed to place her memorial tablet in the ancestral hall. We'll bury her with glory and record her in the family tree. But the Cheng family has its own rules. The highest position in the ancestral hall is reserved for the current head of the Cheng family. She's just a direct descendant after all, and she's a girl. Just as Yun Jian took Shen Ji's tablet and placed it at the highest point in the ancestral hall, a weak middle-aged man's voice sounded. The middle-aged man who spoke weakly was none other than Shen Ji's biological father and Yun Hua's husband, Cheng Bing. Cheng Bing's status in the Cheng family was very low, and because he was the seventh son of the Cheng family's old master, he had many sons and could not be taken care of. In addition, Cheng Bing himself was weak and incompetent, so he was almost dispensable in the Cheng family. This time, Cheng Bing was called over by old Master Cheng. Cheng Bing didn't dare to disobey his father. "Oh," Yun Jian responded softly before Cheng Bing could finish his sentence. Hearing this, the Cheng family members heaved a sigh of relief. Although Shen Ji's friend had displayed terrifying strength, he shouldn't have reached the point of being unreasonable. In the Cheng family's ancestral hall, the highest tablet had always been reserved for the current head of the Cheng family. This meant that old Master Cheng would only have the right to place his tablet at the highest point after he passed away. Just when everyone thought that Yun Jian was going to compromise, Yun Jian's expression changed. Yun Jian reached out to take Shen Ji's tablet. She tried to take it down from the highest point. Seeing this, everyone smiled in satisfaction. However, just as her hand was about to touch Shen Ji's memorial tablet that she had placed at the highest point, her slender and well-defined hand turned abruptly. Bang, bang, bang. Then, a series of bangs rang out. Everyone saw that apart from Shen Ji's tablet at the highest point in the ancestral hall, all the other tablets of the Cheng family's ancestors had been smashed to the ground by Yun Jian. Just as everyone from the Cheng family was stunned, Yi Zichen's expression changed. Yun Jian's cold voice suddenly rang out. "Since these rules were set by your ancestors, then I'll burn them on behalf of the Cheng family. I'm taking this place." Chapter 26-27. Yun Jian had always been a woman of her words. Once she spoke, She spilled the oil on the memorial tablet in the ancestral hall, and a lighter appeared in her hand. Without even looking, she flicked it open with the thumb of her right hand and was about to toss it on the floor as she spoke. "No! Don't burn it! Don't burn it!" As the lighter in Yunjian's hand fell to the ground, Old Master Cheng lunged forward at once. Although Old Master Cheng was stubborn when it came to favoring boys over girls, he cared a lot about his ancestors' memorial tablets. His body, which was already in his 70s, flew forward almost immediately and reached out to grab the lighter that was quickly falling to the ground and igniting the flame. Ignoring the burn on his hand, Old Master Cheng grabbed the lighter and threw it out of the house. The lighter, which had no combustible material, quickly went out. Old Master Cheng's hand was slightly burned, but he didn't care about it. Instead, he looked at Yunjian, his lips trembling. 3 minutes later, Old Master Cheng had no choice. He waved his hand and gave his final answer. "If you want her memorial tablet to be placed at the highest place, then so be it. After all, our Cheng family has wronged her." Old Master Cheng didn't have a conscience. He was just being threatened by Yunjian. "Old Master, you, Dad, Grandpa." As soon as Old Master Cheng finished speaking, everyone in the Cheng family, including the servants who worked for the Cheng family, Old Master Cheng's son and daughter-in-law, as well as his grandchildren and juniors, hurriedly spoke out in an attempt to stop Old Master Cheng's plan. "All right. That's enough. Don't say any more. It's decided." The moment everyone in the Cheng family started to retort, Old Master Cheng shouted loudly and interrupted everyone. Shen Ji's memorial tablet was successfully placed in the Cheng family's ancestral hall. As an ancient feudal family, this was the first time in the history of the Cheng family that a junior who wasn't the Cheng grandmother could be placed in the ancestral hall and even be recorded in the family tree. Other than Yunjian's burial items, Yunjian followed Shen Ji's instructions from an Hun many years ago and buried her in the most ordinary way. Like I said, once a person dies, there is nothing left. He turned into a pile of ash, as if he had never appeared. This was the fate of a secret agent assassin. You would live in glory while you were alive. Dead. If it wasn't for Yunjian calling Huan and the others, no one would have known about Shinji's death. It was like a firework exploding in the dark night, only for a moment of glory. "Shenji, I hope that you can be reincarnated and live a normal life." Yunjian stood in front of Shinji's grave and burned a thick book page by page. This book was a plan made by a group of children to escape when Yunjian was in Hun. But in the end, with Shinji's departure, Yunjian was the only assassin left who had joined in Hun with her. The winner would survive while the weak would be eliminated. Those who couldn't keep up with the world would be thrown into the abyss by the secular world. This was the order of the assassin agent. Looking at the thick booklet burning page by page, Yunjian felt like she was back when she first joined the assassin organization. All the kids gathered together to discuss strategies. However, it was only that one time. All the children had discussed a strategy together. In a survival game where you had to kill your friends and teammates to survive, everyone had forgotten their original intention. To them, death might be the true release. The moment the book was burned to ashes, Yunjian turned and left without looking back. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 26-28. Before leaving the Cheng family, Yunjian had said that as long as she was alive, if the Cheng family dared to touch Shinji's memorial tablet or go back on their word, she would definitely take action. Since Yunjian had said that before, the Cheng family naturally didn't dare to refute her. After all, Yunjian's identity was very likely to be the same as Shinji's. Or even more powerful than Shenji. Country J. Country J was a small country. The people here didn't live a rich life. Because of the bad geography, there were often floods and droughts. Even some of the surrounding powerful countries could easily take over Japan with a wave of their hand, but they couldn't be bothered to do so. This was because Japan was just a small country, and its geographical environment was not attractive at all. But it was a country like this that had the headquarters of the International Assassin website and most of Shenji's forces. The International Assassin website was a platform for assassins to communicate with their employers and accept missions. There must be someone controlling such a website behind the scenes. And its headquarters was in such a backward country. Moreover, Shinji was very close to the boss of the International Assassin website, so all of Shinji's forces were in Country J. Although the Soul Eater organization wasn't in Country J, to Shinji, They weren't that powerful. The money Shenji had earned by risking his life for missions was all in Country J, distributed among his assets in every corner of the country. Headquarters of the International Assassin website. There were no tall buildings in the surrounding area. Only this building, which was at least 30 stories tall, was exceptionally eye-catching. Here, many elites and talents from all over the world worked in this 30-story building. In the conference room, the boss of the International Assassin website stood in the middle of the room, holding a document in his hand. Shenji is dead. The boss whistled as he spoke. The death of an assassin or agent was very normal for the headquarters of the International Assassin website. The death of an assassin or agent meant that her era was over. As mentioned before, no matter how powerful an agent was, once they were found dead, their past would be forgotten. No one would remember her. Even worse. Boss, don't you have a good relationship with Shenji? Don't you feel bad that she's dead? Someone raised an eyebrow, looking very happy. I feel bad? I don't see you guys feeling any heartache. The grand boss raised his hand from the table. He adjusted his tie and walked to the side. Shenji trusted me a lot when she was alive. All her assets and businesses are in Country J, the boss said in front of his subordinates. Boss, what do you mean? Someone below was drooling. He licked his saliva and looked at the final boss expectantly. Regardless of their past achievements, they will still turn to dust after death. As usual, we'll take everything. The boss snapped his fingers. As he spoke, he opened the door of the conference room and walked out. Pack your things. We're going to fight for Shenji's fortune. I'm sure there are already a lot of people internationally eyeing this fat piece of meat that Shenji left behind. First come, first served. We can't fall behind. After the boss finished speaking, he opened the door of the conference room. However, just as the final boss opened the conference room door, everyone suddenly saw a teenage girl standing in front of them like a ghost. The young girl's figure was beautiful. She stood in front of everyone, and when she saw them leave, she raised her head slightly. Under her bangs, the pair of black eyes was so sharp that it was frightening. You are? The boss asked. However, the young girl spoke indifferently and said something that shocked everyone. Number 1 on the International Assassin chart. Slaying God. M. Chapter 26-29. When they heard Yun Jian reveal her identity, the group of executives from the International Secret Service Assassin website narrowed their eyes. An unnatural look of surprise flashed across their faces. Slaying God. The final boss glanced at Yun Jian from the corner of his eyes and asked with an unnatural expression. Although the International Secret Service Assassin website was a communication platform that was tied directly to the Secret Service Assassins, they did not know any of the Secret Service Assassins and Secret Service Assassins who accepted missions from their employers on the website. Secret Service Assassins and Secret Service Assassins were high-risk occupations. Sometimes, even if you had met them, you would put yourself in an abyss of danger. The International Secret Service Assassin website was a platform for employers and Secret Service assassins to get to know each other and make deals. The staff on the website, including the executives, were the final boss and the group of people standing behind him. They earned a cut of the Secret Service Assassins' earnings when they accepted missions from the International Secret Service Assassin website. In other words, the more missions the Secret Service Assassins accepted on the website, the higher the bounty and the more they earned. As the number 1 Secret Service assassin in the world, Slaying God, although the final boss and his group received a small cut of the bounty from Yun Jian, the International Secret Service Assassin website would still earn a lot even if they only received 0.1% of the bounty from Yun Jian's mission, which started at $100 million. Therefore, to the International Secret Service Assassin website, Yun Jian was undoubtedly the biggest crocodile on the website. Cough. However, the final boss reacted quickly. He coughed softly and looked at Yun Jian. He immediately curtsied to Yun Jian with the most standard posture. His attitude was extremely respectful. Is there anything that you need us to do personally? Country J's capital. Downtown area. In a bar with red lights and green lights. The colorful lights in the bar were so eerie that it made one's eyes blur. The people dancing wildly in the flashing lights seemed to be on steroids as they shook their heads wildly and cheered. Among the crowd, no one noticed a 19-year-old teenage girl from Country Z walking to a corner of the bar with 2 bottles of hard liquor mixed by a mixer. There were more than 10 adult men in their 30s and 40s sitting in the corner of the bar. All of them had creepy tattoos on their hands, faces, and the parts of their bodies that were exposed outside of their singlets. The girl with the hard liquor came to the bar. The dozen or so adult men in their 30s and 40s were still talking without restraint. "Big brother, when are we going to make a move?" Among them, there was a young man in his 20s who looked impatient. He hugged an enchanting woman in her 20s who was sitting on his lap and spoke to a man with a tattoo on his chest. "What's the rush? What should be ours will definitely be ours. Shenji is dead." In this world, aside from Mad Dragon, who came from an Hun with that woman, and a few people who have been in seclusion for many years, there's no one else who has the ability to compete with us. The middle-aged man, who was called Big Brother, had a cigarette in his mouth and two beauties in his arms. As he spoke, the middle-aged man patted the buttocks of the blonde beauty sitting on his right. He propped himself up and narrowed his eyes. "Also, I just talked to the people from the International Secret Service Assassin website. This time, we'll work together to seize Shinji's assets. Believe me, this is something that can be obtained with a flip of a hand." As he spoke, the middle-aged man reached out and grabbed the breasts of the beauties on his left and right. His expression was uninterested. "Are there no newcomers here? It's always the same people. There's no novelty at all." Just as the middle-aged man frowned, he suddenly saw a 19-year-old girl walk over with 2 bottles of hard liquor. The words that came out of the girl's mouth made the middle-aged man gulp hard. "Excuse me, these are the whiskey and hard liquor that the gentleman ordered. Would you like me to fill the glasses for the gentleman?" Chapter 2630. Page 1/1. The sweet voice had a hint of a young girl's voice, as though it was the sound of nature, causing people to feel as though they were drowning in it. Even the middle-aged man who was groping the 2 beauties and impatiently muttering that he wanted new goods stared at her. "Newcomer." The middle-aged man glanced at the young girl and placed his elbows on his thighs, looking at the young girl with a pitiful expression. The young girl blinked her large eyes, pinched the tray in her hands, took 2 steps back and pursed her lips. "Yes, I am." The middle-aged man whistled. The blonde beauty sitting on the right side of the middle-aged man rolled her eyes. She just remembered that the young girl came to her bar to apply for a job, saying that she could do anything because her family was too poor. Thinking that the young girl was inexperienced, the blonde beauty touched her face and hurriedly suggested to the middle-aged man, "Big brother, her name is Xiaoqing, she is new to the bar." After saying this, the blonde beauty stretched out her sexy thighs, then raised her leg to the middle-aged man's thigh and rubbed a certain part of the middle-aged man. Then she gently placed her lips that were redder than a monkey's but beside the middle-aged man's ear, blew a breath and said softly, "We have already asked this girl, based on her appearance, she should still be a virgin." After saying this, the blonde beauty flipped her blonde hair and looked at the young girl with her arms crossed. In the bar, there were no companions to speak of, there were only benefits. Some people, for themselves, would use underhanded means to betray their companions. Some incomparably pure young girls, after entering the bar, would meet all kinds of people. Even if they had a good nature, after experiencing some betrayal and torture, they would still be led astray. The blonde beauty secretly interrupted the middle-aged man. No one else heard it. After saying this, the middle-aged man crossed his arms and looked at the young girl. "All right, pour the wine." Seeing this, the young girl placed the tray on the table and poured wine for the men one by one. One of the men wanted to reach out and slap the young girl's butt, but the young girl dodged without any flaws. "Xiaoqing, come quickly, come to Big Brother's side." The blonde beauty beckoned to the young girl. The rest of the middle-aged men and the people sitting by the side had already drunk the wine poured by the young girl. The blonde beauty beckoned to the girl, and the girl immediately followed her. At this moment, the middle-aged man picked up the cup of wine that the young girl had poured for him. He stared at the young girl, intending to drink the wine in the cup in one gulp. However, the moment the middle-aged man placed the wine cup at the tip of his nose and took a light sniff, he suddenly pushed away the blonde beauty who was leaning on him. He picked up the pistol at his waist and shot at the girl. At the same time he shouted, "Don't drink this wine. This woman drugged him." As he spoke, the middle-aged man fired a shot at the young girl. "Ah! Oh!" When the blonde beauty saw this, she and the other beauty covered their ears at the same time. They were so scared that their faces turned pale. However, just when everyone present was so frightened that their faces turned pale, thinking that the young girl holding the tray would definitely die on the spot, the young girl narrowed her eyes deeply. In the next second, she moved sideways to the middle-aged man's side. She wrapped her hand around the middle-aged man's wrist and locked it. She leaned to the side and dodged the bullet shot by the middle-aged man. At the same time, she controlled the handle of the middle-aged man's gun and forcefully slammed the muzzle of the gun into the middle-aged man's group of subordinates, who had already drunk the wine and instantly fainted. Bang! The middle-aged man's subordinate was shot in the head by the middle-aged man's gun in his sleep. This shot should have been shot at Yun Jian's body. And this move only took Yun Jian a short second. In the next second, she wrapped her hand around the middle-aged man's wrist and ruthlessly smashed his wrist joint with one hand. Her other hand at a speed of 0.5 seconds, directly snatched the middle-aged man's gun from his hand. She lifted her leg and directly kicked the middle-aged man to the ground. The golden-haired beauty, as well as the hostess sitting beside her, were all stunned. They didn't expect that the weak young girl who came to apply for the job yesterday, who looked like she had just entered society, was actually. However, this wasn't the end. Bang, bang, bang. A few gunshots rang out at the entrance. Then, a group of people rushed in, led by the boss of the International Assassin Platform. When the middle-aged man saw the boss, he immediately called for help. But before he could call for the boss timidly stood in front of Yun Jian and said with a trembling voice, "Are you planning to take all of Shinji's assets? Here you go. Here you go. Take it all. As for the rest of the bastards who want to snatch your assets, the International Assassin Platform will definitely hunt them down and kill them all for you." Chapter 2631. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation International Secret Assassin Website. These words represented the absolute power and status they held in Country J. Country J's economy was not developed and its geographical location was bad. It was a small country that could easily conquer a powerful country but was too lazy to even make a move due to its bad geographical location. Hence, Shinji's influence and the International Secret Assassin website were undoubtedly more prominent here. Now that Shenji was dead, the International Secret Assassin website was the one with the highest status. What was going on now though? The boss of the International Secret Assassin website was actually speaking to Yun Jian. Not only did he donate all of Shinji's wealth to Yun Jian, but he also said that he would help Yun Jian hunt down the bastard who wanted to fight with Yun Jian for Shinji's wealth. When the gunshot rang out, the blonde and the other beauties in the bar had already shrunk into a corner. However, at this moment, the golden-haired beauty's heart was in a state of shock. Who was this girl? Was she not a poor person who came to apply for a job? Why would she poison her brother? Moreover, she had such terrifying skills. She even had the ability to make the International Secret Assassin website's boss bow down to her. While the blonde and everyone else in the bar, including the middle-aged man who was stepped on by Yun Jian, were perplexed. Yun Jian suddenly spoke to the final boss again, causing everyone to be shocked. Donate all of Shinji's assets to needy children in need in Shinji's name. Not a single cent less. Kill anyone who disobeys my order. This was Shinji's wish and Yun Jian's plan. With that, Yun Jian turned and left without even sparing a glance at the crowd. It was as if she had never appeared. Country Z. Longmen City. When everything was over, Yun Jian returned to the place where the gears of fate began to turn. She brought the sandalwood box, wooden fan, and wooden hairpin back with her. The moment she entered the house, she saw Qin Yiru playing with the children on the sponge mat downstairs. "Xiao Jian, you're back? Have you eaten? There's still rice at home. Do you want me to heat it up for you?" Qin Yiru asked. "No need, I've eaten." Yun Jian shook her head and paused before asking Qin Yiru, Just as she spoke, Qin Yiru pointed upstairs as if she knew that Yun Jian would ask where Si was and replied with a smile, "She's upstairs." Yun Jian answered and went upstairs. Just as she entered the room, Yun Jian house, Yun Jian. It was only after a brief moment of intimacy that Yun Jian showed the 3 divine weapons she brought back this time to Ce for him to take a look. Also, Shi Lin's translation of Ji Su Li Yun. Translation on Ce, to Yun Translation 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 Yun Translation Lin Lu Translation After placing the 3 divine artifacts together, Ce packed up and planned to hide them in a secluded spot. Just as CE was about to put the 3 divine artifacts away, a beam of light flashed from the sandalwood box and refracted into a corner of the room where the curtains were drawn. Then, something surprising happened. After the 3 divine artifacts were placed together, a ball of powerful spiritual energy spiraled out of the sandalwood box and solidified, circling above the room and at the corner of the curtains. Then, a blurry figure appeared in front of Yun Jian and CE. And the owner of that projection was none other than the owner of that phantom. Xing Feng. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Chapter 2632. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. On the eve of the big battle, he retched again. End 1. The illusory figure was like a high-tech projection in a sci-fi movie. When Yun Jian and CE saw it, they looked at each other and stared at the figure that was conjured in front of them. At this moment, Xing Feng looked like he was in a deep sleep. His eyes were tightly shut and he didn't move at all. But the moment the projection projected him, his long eyelashes flickered. The next moment, his eyes, which looked like they had been in a deep sleep for half his life, slowly opened. What entered his vision was a young man in his early 20s. He looked very similar to CE, like a handsome young man who had walked out of a manga. His skin was even more delicate than a baby's, as if it could be broken with a flick of a finger. But because he had inherited CE's excellent genes, his delicate skin didn't lack the charm of a man, nor did he look like a fake man. It could be said that because he had inherited Yun Jian and CE's strengths, Xing Feng's looks had reached the point where it could shock the world at first glance. When Xing Feng saw Yun Jian and CE's faces, he became excited and wanted to walk towards them. Sha, but just as Xing Feng was about to walk towards Yun Jian and CE, the anklet on his feet stopped him from moving forward. Father! Mother! Xing Feng shouted at Yun Jian and CE. As he spoke, tears of sincerity flowed down from the corners of his eyes. They didn't need to look to know that this was the little fellow who had grown up, Siwan. When they saw that Xing Feng's anklet had been shackled, Yun Jian and CE's faces darkened even more. Xing Feng wanted to say something, but he suddenly thought about it. He didn't have much time to reminisce. In order to prevent his future parents from making the same mistakes, Xing Feng shouted at Yun Jian and CE, Yuan Yi must have known about this. I'm sure Yuan Xing has already told you about my identity. I was captured by a mysterious person, and I'm currently locked up in a place with an unknown location. You must have used the 3 magical artifacts that I left behind to see me. This conversation can only last for 10 minutes, so I'll make it short. 10 minutes later, Xing Feng disappeared. Seeing that, Yun Jian's heart tightened. She clenched her fists and looked at CE. CE nodded slightly at her. From the conversation just now, Yun Jian and CE had already grasped the exact location where the mysterious person had locked Xing Feng up. This was going to be a battle of life and death, but for the sake of her child, Yun Jian had to go. Whether she could come back alive was still an unknown. Yun Jian and CE agreed to go to the battlefield 3 days later. This time, they must eradicate the mysterious person from this world. On the second day, Yun Jian was called out by Chen Xinyi. She was about to leave. This time, she did not know if she could come back alive. In spite of it, Yun Jian still went to Chen Xinyi's appointment. Jian, what should I do? My family found out that Xiaofeng and I are dating. They want me to break up with him, Chen Xinyi told Yun Jian with a troubled expression. As she spoke, she took a bite of the drumstick in her hand. Looking at Yun Jian's troubled expression in silence, Chen Xinyi was stunned before she passed a drumstick to Yun Jian. Jian, do you want some? Yun Jian, who was frowning, suddenly felt nauseous when she caught a whiff of the drumstick Chen Xinyi passed to her. She covered her mouth and turned away to retch again. P.S. That's all for today. Good night. Everyone. Wax, did you see the title? It's almost over. Oh? ___. Oh. Chapter 2633. Jian, what's wrong? Does your stomach hurt? Seeing that Yun Jian had turned her head to the side abruptly like she was agitated by something and started retching, Chen Xinyi stood up quickly and strode to Yun Jian's seat, patting Yun Jian's back with a worried frown. I'm fine. Yun Jian took Chen Xinyi's hand, but her heart skipped a beat. Ever since she gave birth to the little boy and girl, she knew how to use contraception when they did it together. She was no longer the inexperienced little girl who knew how to protect herself. She would not repeat the mistake of being tricked by the mysterious person because she did not know that she was pregnant. Jen, you're not pregnant again, are you? Chen Sini suddenly recalled Yun Jian's symptoms. Chen Sini was studying medicine in university. Although she had yet to graduate, she would have chosen this major for nothing if she did not know the general knowledge as a future doctor. Yun Jian's hands froze when she heard Chen Sini's words. Chen Sini waved at Yun Jian, as if she had forgotten her worries. She pulled Yun Jian's hand with a smile and pressed her index and middle fingers on Yun Jian's wrist like an experienced Chinese physician, pinching the joints of Yun Jian's wrist gently. Let me take a look. Your pulse is... your pulse is jumping non-stop. I think it's very likely that you're pregnant. Jen, you can't go wrong trusting me. I'm from a medical school after all. The scene changed to the outpatient room of Longmen City People's Hospital. Your symptoms are due to the oily food you've been eating recently. You must have swallowed it without chewing carefully, right? Write more bland things these few days. Remember, you must chew and swallow slowly when you eat next time. Here is the medical record. You can prescribe the medicine now. The doctor in the outpatient room, who was wearing a pair of heavy, thick and cumbersome glasses, reached out his right hand and gently lifted his glasses frame. He pushed the medical record book to Yun Jian with his left hand. Chen Sini pursed her lips as she stood at the side, pursing her lips. She had some skills. Chen Sini wanted to inherit the old profession passed down from her ancestors, so she chose to major in medicine. But based on the current situation, she had clearly learned the ancient Chinese medicine techniques from her grandfather, so why couldn't she figure it out? Cough, cough, cough. Of course, it was better not to let others know about this kind of miscalculation and disgrace. After all, she was determined to become a famous doctor in the future. Chen Sini and Yun Jian took the medicine and walked out of the hospital. These days, Yun Jian indeed had no appetite, so when she ate, she would wolf down her food and finish it carelessly. It was only when Ce was around that she would chew slowly. As soon as he walked out of the hospital, he saw two people walking towards him. It was Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen. Sini, why are you in the hospital? Are you hurt? Or? Zhang Xiaofeng asked Chen Sini loudly just as he walked over. They had not seen each other for a few days as they were forced to separate by their families. It's not me, it's Jen. Chen Sini mumbled. Are you okay? Ling Yichen, who stood beside Zhang Xiaofeng, scratched his head and asked in a friendly manner as a friend. I'm fine. Yun Jian shook her head. Jen, you must take good care of yourself. The doctor said that if you don't take good care of your stomach, you'll have major problems in the future. Chen Sini looked at Yun Jian worriedly. Just as Chen Sini finished her words, however, she saw a slender and handsome man walking over from the opposite side of the road. He was still incomparably handsome, but at this moment, there was a trace of gloominess on his handsome face. It was Ce. When Ce walked over with his long strides, he seemed to have heard some important news as he grabbed Yun Jian's wrist and dragged her away with a look that those who did not know better would think that he was a domestic abuser who was about to abuse his wife. His action startled two elderly people who were about to walk out of the hospital while supporting each other in their hospital gowns. They rushed over to hold Ce back. Hey, young man. Let's talk nicely. You can't hit a woman. Let go. Chapter 26:34. It was no wonder that they misunderstood Ce. They were both wearing hospital uniforms and were about to go out to get some sun. Ce was emitting a strong aura of violence from head to toe. He looked as if he was really going to commit domestic violence on the streets. Moreover, the two elders had lived almost their entire lives. They had seen a lot more things than ordinary people. They had seen many cases of husband and wife fighting after marriage and the husband abusing his wife. The two elders were also good people. The moment they saw Ce grab Yun Jian's wrist and walk away, they thought that Ce was going to commit domestic violence on Yun Jian. The grandfather of the two elders thought that Ce was going to hit Yun Jian. He was originally supporting the old lady, but after receiving the old lady's signal, he staggered over and tried to pull Ce away. Young man, a man must learn to be tolerant. Look at how beautiful your wife is. Can you bear to hit her? Listen to me. Live happily with your wife. If you're unhappy, talk to each other. You can't hit her. The grandfather's words not only made Siyi's eyes darken, but even Chen Xini, Zhang Xiaofeng, and Ling Yichen couldn't help but laugh. Of course I can. Siyi raised his eyebrows and suddenly smiled wickedly. However, when the grandfather saw his expression, he thought that Siyi was really going to commit domestic violence on Yun Jian. You can't. You can't, young man, you can't. The grandfather was afraid that Siyi would really hit Yun Jian, so he quickly reached out his dry and old hand to pull Siyi back. Before the old man could extend his hand, however, Siyi had extended his long bony hand that was exquisite and beautiful enough to make a handcon scream and swung it at Yun Jian's cheek. The moment his hand was about to touch Yun Jian's cheek, Siyi's hand suddenly circled around Yun Jian's head and pressed against the back of Yun Jian's head. Then, in front of everyone, he bent down slightly and placed his head in front of Yun Jian's face. Without saying anything, he kissed Yun Jian's little mouth heavily. He even made a smacking sound. This sound scared the old man so much that he took 2 steps back. The old lady's heart skipped a beat. He only kissed Yun Jian's little mouth for 3 seconds. After 3 seconds, Siyi grabbed Yun Jian's wrist again in a position that was mistaken for domestic violence. He said something that sounded angry but also seemed to have a deeper meaning. If she doesn't take good care of herself, I can do it myself. I'll teach her a lesson. Who in their right mind would talk about this kind of small train and use it as an excuse to show off? Siyi's words scared the old couple so much that they almost had a heart attack. Zhang Xiaofeng and Chen Xini froze on the spot. By the time everyone reacted, Siyi had already walked away with Yun Jian. For the next 2 days, Siyi kept watch over Yun Jian, making her chew and swallow her food slowly. If she didn't comply, in the bedroom on the 2nd floor, the little girl and the little girl were taken away by Qin Yiru. Yun Jian was sitting on Siyi's lap and being fed by Siyi mouthful by mouthful. Chew more. If I find out that something's wrong with your body again. As Siyi spoke, he thrust his body forward. Yun Jian couldn't hold it in and almost cried out. However, the curtains on the 2nd floor were tightly shut. In front of the desk, Yun Jian was sitting on Siyi's lap. That wasn't the point. The point was that both of them were naked, and he actually used such a shameful method to make her eat slowly. I'm done eating. Let me down. But I'm not full yet. Chapter 26:35. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Yun Jian admitted that if anyone knew about this, she would probably die of embarrassment. He actually thought of such a way to make her chew her rice slowly. Yun Jian couldn't even see through Siyi. Where was his usual aloofness? Where did he go? Why did he? Ma'am. The day was still long, but at this time and place, it was extremely beautiful. On the 3rd day, Yun Jian and Siyi went to Qin Yiru's house first. They took a look at the little guy and the little girl, kissed their foreheads, and left quietly while the 2 little guys were still sleeping. Just as Yun Jian and Siyi were about to get into Siyi's Lamborghini, a magnetic male voice sounded behind them. Is it convenient for you to join us? The 2 of them turned around and saw Yuan Xin, who was wearing a ghost mask, standing beside the Lamborghini. Yuan Xin lightly patted the Lamborghini and smiled at Yun Jian and Siyi. Yun Jian tilted her head and leaned towards the back seat of the Lamborghini, pursing her lips. Get in. The biggest difference between Yun Jian's Ferrari and the Lamborghini was that the Ferrari didn't have a single back seat. Even though the Lamborghini didn't have a back seat door, the back seat was still a little narrow. For people like the little guy and the little girl, sitting in the back seat of the Lamborghini, other than having less space to move around compared to a normal car, there was no other difference. However, for someone like Yuan Xin, who was 1.8 meters tall, sitting in the back seat of the Lamborghini, he became... Yuan Xion's body was curled up and he couldn't even straighten his back. He was like those acrobats who were put into a big box. Other than being able to move his hands and feet, his neck was crooked when he was put into the box. His neck was crooked and he couldn't move at all. Imagine a man who was 1.8 meters tall, wearing a ghost mask, squeezing into the back seat of an indescribably narrow sports car. What kind of scene would that be? Wait. Are you going to let me sit in this car for more than 20 hours? Yuan Xian saw that he was sitting in the back seat of the Lamborghini and couldn't stretch his arms. He was stunned for a moment. Then he seemed to resist. I'll get out of the car and find a car that can drive to follow you. Yuan Xian rolled his eyes. Even though the Lamborghini had a back seat, because the structure of the Lamborghini translation, the back seat wasn't suitable because of the design of the car. The translation. If Yuan Xian wanted to get out, he would step on the driver's seat and the passenger's seat. Once you're in the car, you're not allowed to get out. Yun Jian, who was sitting in the passenger's seat, smiled evilly. As if responding to Yun Jian's words, Ce locked the door, and the car sped to the road at the fastest speed. In the next second, he disappeared from where he stood. Only Yuan Xian was left to roar in exasperation. No wonder my father said that you two are simply demons. Demons. Ce drove for more than 20 hours, overtaking countless cars on the way, and finally arrived at the destination. Yuan Xian's back was hunched when he got out of the car. It's here. Yun Jian pointed to a forest on the side of the road and said. Since they had arrived at the destination, Yuan Xian's eyes began to darken. I don't know how to get there, but there must be someone strange nearby. As long as we find the person, we can find the way to the future. Yes, they were going to the future world. Because the mysterious man came here from the future world. Translator. Transin editor. Transin. Chapter 2636. Originally, they were still dubious about the mysterious man's origin. However, after talking to Xing Feng, Yun Jian and Ce finally understood. They understood what even Yuan Jin did not know. This matter was very complicated. It was not a coincidence that Xing Feng and Yuan Jin could come here from the future world. After all, Yun Jian and Ce were so powerful, but they could not travel through time. Yuan Jin could open the space-time door because there was a strange power in the depths of this forest. As long as you had a little bit of spiritual power, you could open the space-time door. Only the powerful could control the space-time you wanted to go to. Xing Feng had strong spiritual energy, so he was able to control himself from losing control. However, Yun Jian and Ce could not find the mysterious man's hiding place because the mysterious man was not from this world. Like Xing Feng, he came from the future. However, before the mysterious man became a mysterious man, he was just a very ordinary person. In other words, in the future world, the mysterious man traveled to the era before the dominator of the deity continent was born. No matter how many years had passed, he could always return to the original time of the future world. If one wanted to say that Yun Jian and Ce could find the mysterious man in the present world and kill him before he became a mysterious man, it was indeed possible. If they could find him in the present world and kill him before he became a mysterious man, then everything about the mysterious man traveling through time and space to the deity continent and what happened later would not have happened. However, the mysterious man was very cunning. He seemed to have known that his identity would be exposed, so he always showed up in a black robe. No matter how powerful Yun Jian and Ce were, they could not find out what kind of existence the mysterious man was on Earth before he became a mysterious man. Therefore, in order to find the root of everything, they had to go to the future world. Only then could they solve all the mysteries. And kill the mysterious man completely. I'll go ask around and see if anyone who knows where to go in and out of this forest has noticed anything unusual. Yuan Lin reached out his hand and shook his head from left to right. The bones on his pillow made a cracking sound. Okay. Yun Jian nodded. Hearing this, Yuan Jin walked to the nearby village. This was a foreign country, a border area that did not belong to any country. The people who lived here lived in tribes, and they all lived in thatched huts. There was no other name for this forest. For the time being it was called the Space-Time Forest. 15 minutes later, Yuan Jin came back with the residents of a nearby village. When the residents of this village arrived, the village chief said, "Something strange is indeed happening here. Oh, the forest near us. It's been very safe since ancient times. There are no wild beasts and everyone goes into the forest to chop firewood. But last week, Ah Hui went into the forest and never came back. We felt that something was wrong, so we sent another 3 people to look for him, but there was no news. They all went missing. Everyone thought that this was a punishment bestowed upon our village by the forest god's wrath." When the village chief said this, his whole body was trembling violently. But as soon as he finished speaking, a villager suddenly ran out from the side and shouted loudly in a frightened voice, "What's wrong?" Village chief. I found a Hui and the others near the forest. They were all covered in blood and were left on the outskirts of the forest. Chapter 26:37. Originally, they were still dubious about the mysterious man's origin. However, after talking to Xing Feng, Yun Jian and Ce finally understood. They understood what even Yuan Jin did not know. This matter was very complicated. It was not a coincidence that Xing Feng and Yuan Jin could come here from the future world. After all, Yun Jian and Ce were so powerful, but they could not travel through time. Yuan Jin could open the space-time door because there was a strange power in the depths of this forest. As long as you had a little bit of spiritual power, you could open the space-time door. Only the powerful could control the space-time you wanted to go to. Xing Feng had strong spiritual energy, so he was able to control himself from losing control. However, Yun Jian and Ce could not find the mysterious man's hiding place because the mysterious man was not from this world. Like Xing Feng, he came from the future. However, before the mysterious man became a mysterious man, he was just a very ordinary person. In other words, in the future world, the mysterious man traveled to the era before the dominator of the deity continent was born. No matter how many years had passed, he could always return to the original time of the future world. If one wanted to say that Yun Jian and Ce could find the mysterious man in the present world and kill him before he became a mysterious man, it was indeed possible. If they could find him in the present world and kill him before he became a mysterious man, then everything about the mysterious man traveling through time and space to the deity continent and what happened later would not have happened. However, the mysterious man was very cunning. He seemed to have known that his identity would be exposed, so he always showed up in a black robe. No matter how powerful Yun Jian and Ce were, they could not find out what kind of existence the mysterious man was on Earth before he became a mysterious man. Therefore, in order to find the root of everything, they had to go to the future world. Only then could they solve all the mysteries and kill the mysterious man completely. I'll go ask around and see if anyone who knows where to go in and out of this forest has noticed anything unusual. Yuan Lin reached out his hand and shook his head from left to right. The bones on his pillow made a crisp cracking sound. Okay. Yun Jian nodded. Hearing this, Yuan Jin walked to the nearby village. This was a foreign country, a border area that did not belong to any country. The people who lived here lived in tribes, and they all lived in thatched huts. There was no other name for this forest. For the time being it was called the Space-Time Forest. 15 minutes later, Yuan Jin came back with the residents of a nearby village. When the residents of this village arrived, the village chief said, "Something strange is indeed happening here. Oh, the forest near us. It's been very safe since ancient times. There are no wild beasts and everyone goes into the forest to chop firewood. But last week, Ah Hui went into the forest and never came back. We felt that something was wrong, so we sent another 3 people to look for him, but there was no news. They all went missing. Everyone thought that this was a punishment bestowed upon our village by the forest god's wrath." When the village chief said this, his whole body was trembling violently. But as soon as he finished speaking, a villager suddenly ran out from the side and shouted loudly in a frightened voice, "Brother Zhao, you've been killed." Village chief. I found a Hui and the others near the forest. They were covered in blood and left outside the forest. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 26:38. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. A group of fashionably dressed young boys and girls with hair dyed in various colors gathered together by the roadside, drinking milk tea, dating openly, going out to play and singing in the KTV. This group of fashionably dressed young boys and girls chatted with each other and came to a large KTV. They asked for a large private room and sang happily for 5 hours. Until 6 o'clock in the evening. Today was New Year's Eve. Most people would stay at home to enjoy the warmth of family. Or like this group of young boys and girls, they would go to the KTV with some good friends and play all night long before going home in the middle of the night. Some girls even didn't go home and stayed at their boyfriends' houses for the night. Compared to 2004, the boys and girls of this era were many times happier. Most of their families were not poor, so students who went to college were especially fun. At a certain university, a girl who was dressed like someone from the 2000s and had a black mask on her face walked out of the university. Apart from her perfect figure, she looked very ordinary. At the entrance of the university, a man who was 185 meters tall and wore matching outfits with a girl, but he wore a cap that covered his face. When he saw the girl walking out of the university, he came over to hold her hand and left the university in a low-key manner. Yes, the girl was Yun Jian. The man was CE. They found the space-time tunnel to the future in the space-time forest and opened the space-time door to the present 15 years later. That was 2019. I didn't find any unusual students in the school these 2 days, Yun Jian said. She meant that she didn't find the mysterious man in the school. Now Yun Jian and CE were facing a very serious problem. In this world, they had no money or power. In other words, they didn't have the money or the power to investigate the hiding place of the mysterious man. They learned from Yuan Lin that in the future world, Yun Jian and CE were dead. He died 3 years ago, in the battle with the mysterious man in 2016. After Yun Jian and CE died together with the mysterious man in the future world, all the forces fell apart in an instant. Without their masters, all the forces began to fall. Kosha mercenaries, and Hun group, and those forces led by Yun Jian and CE were all divided by the international tycoons. That was the situation in the future. But Yun Jian and CE came back. Since they came to the future world, they must change the situation and kill the mysterious man with their own hands. In this world, Xingfeng gave up his life and came back to the past, to change the fate of Yun Jian and CE, who died with the mysterious man in the future. He wanted to change Yun Jian and CE. Yun would not let her son, CE, see Xingfeng. She would send the mysterious man to hell in person. CE covered his face with his cap and held Yun Jian's hand. When they came to a fork in the road, they were blocked by a group of people with arms akimbo, as if they were going to fight. CE didn't want to cause trouble, so he took Yun Jian to a detour. Who would have thought that the group would block Yun Jian and CE again? The leader of the group looked at Yun Jian from head to toe and spoke like a ruffian. You're right. Girl, I heard that you dress very shabbily at school. You've become famous in just 2 days. People in the school are talking about you like crazy. Hurry up, take off your mask and let me see what you look like. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Chapter 2639. Part 1. Page 1/1. The leader of the group shook his legs. It was obvious that he wasn't a student of this university. He was most likely a hooligan. He didn't belong to any gangs. Therefore, this ruffian boy would at most drag his buddies along with him. Usually, when he was unhappy with someone, he would get into a group fight with them to show off his power. Above the black mask, Yun Jian's sharp eyes flashed slightly. Seeing that Yun Jian and CE didn't say anything, the leader of the group laughed cruelly and walked over to forcefully pull off Yun Jian's mask. But just as he reached out his hand, halfway through, a slender palm blocked his path. Immediately after, 2 gotcha sounds of the bones in his palms breaking could be clearly heard. Ow! The ruffian boy screamed in pain. F***CK. Are you all just going to watch me get bullied? Go. F***CK. The hooligan's wrist was grabbed by CE, and the bones in his hand were broken. As he howled like a pig, he called for his buddies to come over and help. As soon as the boy shouted, more than 10 boys around him were enraged. They all rushed towards Yun Jian and CE to surround them. 1 minute later, more than 10 boys were thrown to the ground by Yun Jian and CE. More than 10 boys howled like pigs. In 2019, law and order were very good. When the boys led a group of people to surround Yun Jian and CE, someone had already called the police. 10 minutes later, everyone was sitting in a nearby police station. Name. A female police officer held a registration book and asked the leader of the group that surrounded Yun Jian and CE. Zhang Xiaosan. The boy touched his hand that had been broken by CE and replied dejectedly. Ha 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 ha. The boy, who was one of Zhang Xiaosan's close friends, couldn't help but laugh out loud the moment he heard his name. F***CK. What are you laughing at? Zhang Xiaosan glared at his brother with a dispirited look. 20 minutes later, the group left the police station. Before they left, Zhang Xiaosan and his gang were severely criticized by the police. Yun Jian and CE left the police station without saying a word. At this moment, Zhang Shaosan touched his hand and brought his men to surround them. I've never been beaten up like this in my entire life. Zhang Shaosan brought his men and surrounded him again. This was the first thing he said. More than 10 of Zhang Shaosan's buddies, including Zhang Shaosan, were beaten black and blue by Yun Jian and Ce. Brother, sister, I, Shaosan, have decided that you are my brothers. Zhang Shaosan patted his chest with the hand that hadn't been broken by Ce and said loudly to Yun Jian and Ce. Yun Jian glanced at Zhang Shaosan with her sharp eyes and didn't say anything. She didn't intend to pay attention to him. But Zhang Shaosan's next words attracted Yun Jian's attention. Brother, sister. From now on, you two are my ancestors. Needless to say, I, Zhang Shaosan, have the best power in this area. If you need any help, just let me know. After he finished speaking, Yun Jian and Ce looked at each other and nodded at Zhang Shaosan. In this era, Yun Jian and Ce had no power. Everything had to start from scratch. But, as the former king, even if they started from scratch, they would still be invincible. At Yun Jian's request, Zhang Shaosan quickly helped to search for information about the mysterious man. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2640. Speaking of which, Zhang Shaosan's influence was not small. He contacted a group of his friends from various places and actually searched the entire Zhe province. Hey, I heard a piece of news. I heard that there was an abandoned teaching building near our university. There was a man in a black robe, with only a pair of dark eyes exposed. I don't know if he's the one you're looking for. Brother, sister. If you want to go, I'll lead the way for you. Zhang Shaosan patted his shoulder and said, Let's go. Yun Jian nodded simply. Zhang Shaosan rushed out of the door as if he was dealing with his own business. Thank you, Shaosan. Just as Zhang Shaosan was about to step out of the door, Yun Jian's intimate address scared Zhang Shaosan so much that he slipped and fell to the ground. Sister. You can call me Sansan or Zhang in the future. Can you drop the word Shaosan? I beg you, sister. Zhang Shaosan said with a bitter face. Yun Jian just nodded slightly and said nothing. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Yun Jian met up with Zhang Shaosan and the others alone. Yuan Jin had some influence in this world. Ce planned to use Yuan Jin's influence to take back the forces that had been scattered by the death of Yun Jian and Ce in the future world. Needless to say, Ce really had the ability to do so. Using a small force to swallow a big force. Starting from scratch, Ce would still be the king. The ruler of the divine continent, the divine emperor. Because the search for the mysterious man could not be limited to Zhe province or country Z. It required connections, financial resources, and power. Coming here, Yun Jian and Ce did not plan to get rich in one go and find the mysterious person at once. Since they were sure that the mysterious man was here, it was only a matter of time before they found him. Yun Jian met up with Zhang Shaosan and the others alone. Sis, you're here? Zhang Shaosan chuckled at Yun Jian. Yun Jian nodded and led the way to the abandoned school building. Why are you here? Just as Yun Jian was walking towards the abandoned school building, she heard Zhang Shaosan shouting behind her. Since you're here, why can't I be here? The voice of a female university student came from behind. Yun Jian just turned sideways and gave him a sidelong glance. The person who came was actually one of the girls who had commented in front of the coffee shop not long ago that their university had produced a rustic girl who dressed like she was from the year 2000. This girl's name was Fong Lingli, and she was a very clever girl. Behind Fong Lingli was a group of girls. It seemed like they were here to join in the fun. Coincidentally, Fong Lingli was Zhang Shaosan's girlfriend. At this moment, when Fong Lingli saw Yun Jian, she couldn't help but narrow her eyes. She took the lead and pointed at Yun Jian. Zhang Shaosan pointed at Zhang Shaosan and said to Zhang Shaosan, Why did you call her here? Don't you know that she's the weirdo in our university? As Fong Lingli spoke, she grabbed Zhang Shaosan's shirt and took 2 big steps back. However, just as Fong Lingli and the others were done talking, Yun Jian suddenly saw a figure coming from behind them. The owner of that silhouette, she was. Seeing this, Yun Jian's eyes flickered. Without saying a word, she suddenly removed her black mask in front of everyone. 3 years ago, when news of the death of the top international secret agent, slaying God, spread, everyone in the world knew about it. It had been 3 years since slaying God's death, but her reputation had never faded. It was said that the existence of assassins and secret agents was like fireworks after her death. After being dazzling, it would fade away. However, slaying God's death was like a reminder to people. No matter how many years had passed, her existence was enough to make people tremble in fear. She had become an eternal legend in the world of assassins and secret agents. Moreover, when slaying God died, all the major international newspapers were filled with her looks for an entire year. When Yun Jian removed her black mask, everyone saw Yun Jian's face. With Zhang Shaosan and Fang Lingli in the lead, everyone stared at Yun Jian. Suddenly, their pupils dilated and they exclaimed, "Why you? Why you? Aren't you the top international secret agent, slaying God who died 3 years ago?" Chapter 2641. Slaying God, who had died in 2016 and was ranked number 1 on the International Secret Agent Assassin ranking. Although Fang Lingli and the rest were from the same school as Yun Jian, they had been discussing Yun Jian's looks in front of the cafe not too long ago. However, no one had actually seen Yun Jian's face before. This was because Yun Jian had been wearing a black mask ever since she transferred to university. However, they could vaguely tell from her facial features that Yun Jian was not ugly. That was why people said that she must be a plastic surgery freak. However, when the black mask on Yun Jian's face was removed, everyone was stunned. However, Yun Jian ignored their shock. She hung the black mask by her ear and took 2 steps forward with her long legs. She saw a woman standing behind Zhang Shaosan, Fang Lingli, and the rest. The woman was dressed in a flamboyant outfit and looked sexy and seductive. The woman was tall and slender. In 2019, she was already in her 30s. She and Yun Jian, who was not even in her 20s, looked at each other in front of Zhang Shaosan, Fang Lingli, and the rest. Fang Lingli, Zhang Shaosan, and the rest who had recovered from the shock were secretly comforting themselves. It was probably just a coincidence that Yun Jian looked similar to a dead person. When Yun Jian and the woman in her 30s looked at each other, Zhang Shaosan, Fang Lingli, and the rest were shocked again. Why did Yun Jian and the woman look at each other and feel like they had crossed time and space? Who's this woman? Fang Lingli glanced at the woman in her 30s and used her manicured hand to tuck her hair gently. She should be my sister's friend. Just watch quietly and don't talk nonsense. Zhang Shaosan grabbed Fang Lingli and addressed Yun Jian as his sister. Perhaps due to Yun Jian's terrifying face, Fang Lingli and the group of female university students who were with Fang Lingli kept their mouths shut. At that moment, Zhang Shaosan and the rest of the delinquents, Fang Lingli, and the group of female university students saw Yun Jian stop when she was about 3 meters away from the woman in her 30s. They thought that the two of them were old friends who had not seen each other for a long time and that they would extend their arms and hug each other tightly like normal teenage girls. This was something that only normal people would do. Who knew that when Yun Jian was 3 meters away from the woman, she would suddenly stop. She suddenly pulled out a fruit knife from her waist, replacing the butterfly knife that she was good at, and dashed toward the woman. Zhang Shaosan, Fang Lingli, and the rest were shocked when they saw that. "Oh my God! Sister! Elder, please be careful, the blade does not have eyes, it can kill." Zhang Shaosan was so scared that he kept shouting. How was this meeting an old friend? This was clearly a meeting between 2 enemies, and their eyes blazed with hatred. Fang Lingli and the others were all students. In the peaceful era of 2019, who would still use knives and guns? Zhang Ziziz's. Yun Jian was playing with her life. However, just as Yun Jian's knife was about to pierce the woman's heart, the knife flashed and a long knife was pushed out from the woman's wrist. The long knife blocked Yun Jian's knife. When the two collided, there was a series of sparks. Yun Jian's lips curled up at that moment. She said, "You're still alive." The woman on the other side also smiled and replied with a reply that shocked everyone present. "You too." This woman in her 30s was none other than Ji Yi. She was Shen Ji, who had died in 2004. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 2642. As for why Shinji was still alive in 2019. Have you ever heard of a time machine? Some people could open the door of time and space, travel to many years ago, and change history. Shinji was still alive in 2019, but Shinji was already dead in the year Yunjian was born in 2004. Did this mean that Shinji could be resurrected after his death in 2004? Of course, all of this was still unknown. Yunjian came to Country Z in 2019 from 2004 to change the future. The future could be changed. After all, the beginning of everything was the mysterious man's return to the starting point of Lord God, which changed everything. If the mysterious man had not accidentally gone to the divine continent in 2019, Yunjian, as the witch goddess, would not have been attacked, and Ce, as the immortal, would not have sacrificed his life to save her. The two of them would not have fallen to the earth. In general, this was the only point. It was the mysterious man who accidentally went to the divine continent and attacked Yunjian, and Ce and Yunjian both fell to the earth. What happened later was not much different from what Yunjian had experienced, except for the absence of the sandalwood box, wooden fan, and wooden hairpin. The only difference was that Yunjian and Ce gave birth to Si Luo. After Si Luo grew up, Yunjian and Ce died together with the mysterious man, and only Si Luo and Yuanjin survived. By chance, Si Luo found out that the mysterious man was reborn in the era he lived in and went to the divine continent. When the mysterious man was at large in Yunjian's era, Si Luo, who had not yet become a mysterious man, also existed in the world. However, the mysterious man only showed a pair of dark eyes, and his whole body was covered in a black robe, so Si Luo could not kill him as early as 2004, before the mysterious man found a way to go to the divine continent. Si Luo went to the divine continent with the mysterious man in the future when the mysterious man had just become a mysterious man and found the passage to the divine continent. In general, Yunjian had experienced 2 repetitive lives. She had no impression of the first repetitive life. Everything is complicated to say, but you just need to remember one thing. From 2004, Yunjian and Ce traveled through time and space to 2019, just to find the mysterious man and kill him, so as to change the future of herself, Ce, and everyone else who perished together with the mysterious man. Even if her and Ce's deaths were already a foregone conclusion. However, the future could be changed. My life is in my hands and not in the hands of the heavens. She, Yunjian, was going to defy the heavens and take control of her own luck. Inside the cafe, Yunjian put on the black mask again. Shinji also wore a hat. Zhang Xiaosan, Feng Lingli, and the others stood like bodyguards beside the table where Yunjian and Shinji were staring at each other, about 10 meters away. Shinji didn't seem to know about this. She raised her eyebrows and asked Yunjian, "So you're saying that I died in 2004? Yunjian responded softly. Shinji raised her eyebrows and looked at Yunjian. She said half-jokingly, "In my current world, you 006, are also a dead person. Do you know how shocked I was when I heard that you were dead? I can't believe you, 006, will die one day." Haha. Shinji's words were a little harsh, but Yunjian knew she was joking. Yunjian pressed her lips together and asked in return, "Then it's your turn to explain why you were with the mysterious man's underling in 2004. Shinji nodded and smiled. She told Yunjian honestly, "Because I owed him a favor. But I want to know my character. I wouldn't have hurt you in the past, would I?" Chapter 2643. You didn't harm me. You even saved my life. Yunjian stood up and crossed her arms in front of her chest with a smile on her face. After a while she continued to ask, "Which means you know the identity of the mysterious man? Who is he?" The corners of Shenji's lips twitched at the mention of this. That guy is very cunning. He knows that he was just an ordinary earthling before he took on his current identity. He's afraid that he'll be killed in another time and space. He didn't send anyone to protect himself as an ordinary person in another time and space. That's why he didn't expose himself at all. When Shenji said this, the twitch of his lips was tinged with anger. Yunjian's eyes dimmed at his words. However, what Shenji said next caught Yunjian's attention. "But I know that the guy has a weakness that outsiders don't know about." Shinji's words made Yunjian's eyes narrow. After leaving the cafe, Zhang Xiaosan, Feng Lingli, and the others kept their mouths shut. It was as if they had found out something that should not be leaked to the outside world, as they did not publicize anything about Yunjian. After the future Yunjian died, all the forces under her were taken over by Shen Ji alone. They did not fall into the hands of outsiders. Shen Ji had even asked Yun Jian if she wanted to return her forces to her, but Yun Jian had declined decisively. She only asked Shen Ji to help find the mysterious man's whereabouts. Her purpose in coming to the future was to kill the mysterious man and nothing else. During the weekend, Yun Jian took the high-speed rail back to Longmen City from a university. There was no high-speed rail in 2004, but with Yun Jian's understanding, she quickly learned how to buy tickets with her smartphone. The Longmen City of 2004 and 2019 had undergone drastic changes. Whether it was the streets, the alleys, the city's scale, or the people's living conditions, everything had changed drastically. Based on Longmen City's economic situation in 2019, every household could afford a car now. Yun Jian tightened her black mask and arrived at a familiar yet strange home, Qin Yiru's home. Yun Jian and Ce had died in the battle, but Qin Yiru, Gu Junjian, and the others were still alive. When he arrived at the door, he saw Qin Yiru, who was already in her 50s or 60s, bending over to sweep the fallen leaves on the ground. Because of her old age, Qin Yiru had to use her other hand to support her waist when she bent down. His back looked lonely and desolate. Yun Jian clenched her fists. She had no intention of going forward to acknowledge him. At this moment, a passerby suddenly threw a bunch of bananas into Qin Yiru's house. The bunch of bananas hit Qin Yiru hard. Bah! The murderer's mother. A man who passed by suddenly spat at Qin Yiru in the yard. The woman beside the man tugged at the passerby and said fearfully, "That's slaying God's mother after all." What if? What if? Slaying God is already dead. Ha! How dare a woman flaunt her power to this extent? There's nothing left if she's dead. It's good enough that I didn't F*King rush in and beat slaying God's mother up. Look at slaying God's mother. Her leg isn't working. Wasn't it crippled by someone earlier? Without slaying God's support, she's nothing. The man spat and pulled the woman beside him, who was his girlfriend, away. They had just turned into an empty alley. The man was holding the woman's hand as they walked forward happily. Suddenly, a slender girl wearing a black mask appeared in front of them. F*CK. Who are you? What the hell are you doing? The man was startled and cursed. After that, the man pulled the woman, wanting to go around the girl in front of them and leave. However, just as the man was about to go around the girl suddenly took off her black mask, revealing her true face. Just as the man and woman were so frightened that their faces turned pale, they saw the young girl turn her head to look at them. But out of nowhere, she uttered the last sentence the man and woman heard in their lives. "Weren't you talking about me so enthusiastically just now? Why? Can't you guess who I am after seeing my face? Chapter 2644. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Part 1, Part 2, Page 1/1. Slaying. 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 Slaying God. The man did not even have time to recover from his shock. He gasped for air as he exclaimed. His rosy cheeks were now replaced by paleness and horror. Isn't slaying God dead? Didn't the media release slaying God's face after her death? The woman was pale with fright as well. She gripped the man's hand so hard that she could break his skin. However, when she recalled what they had done earlier, tap, tap, it was a quiet and deserted alley surrounded by residences. Since it was 1 or 2 in the afternoon, the residents had either gone out to have fun or were taking a nap at home. At this time, the originally quiet alley was the most deserted. Yun Jian's long white shoes stepped lightly on the ground. She looked like a grim reaper who had just opened the gates of hell and stepped over thousands of corpses. Her sharp eyes glanced sideways at the man and woman. You. I'm telling you. This is a lawful society. If you dare do anything to me. Me. If you dare kill me. There will be evidence left at the crime scene. This is a high-tech society. If you kill me, they'll definitely find out that you're the murderer. If you're caught, you'll be sent to jail. Lay down your knife and become a Buddha. I advise you to be kind. The man's voice was trembling as he spoke. His grip on his girlfriend's hand loosened unknowingly. Just as Yun Jian was about to reach him, the man grabbed his girlfriend and hugged her tightly, trying to pull her to him. However, Yun Jian handed him a piece of white paper and a black pen. Write down all the people and addresses you know who bullied Qin Yiru's family, and I'll let you go. Yun Jian's words made the man heave a huge sigh of relief. He quickly grabbed the black pen from Yun Jian's hand and wrote down all the names and addresses he knew on the white paper. Everything I know is up there. Let's go. The man shoved the black pen and white paper back into Yun Jian's hands. He pushed his girlfriend and staggered 2 steps forward. He almost lost his balance and stumbled. Hold on. Yun Jian said slowly and gloomily. From the sound of her voice, one could tell that there was not a single trace of expression on her face. The man and his girlfriend's hearts trembled slightly. Just as the man turned around and was about to ask if Yun Jian was going to go back on her word, he suddenly heard a cold and indifferent voice behind him. He had heard the last words in this world. You two know that I'm still alive in this world. Do you really think you can leave safely? And province. Hezhou City. In a certain dance studio. A group of young girls dressed in bright and beautiful clothes were following their instructor in front of a large mirror, swaying their bodies to the music and dancing seductively. Unlike these young girls who were dressed in bright and beautiful clothes, there were 2 or 3 hourly workers who were wearing overalls and yellowish-white shoes. They were bent over the large floor of the dance studio, cleaning and mopping the floor. They were immersed in their work. These 2 or 3 hourly workers were hired by the boss to clean the dance studio every day. Among them, a girl with a slender figure and a perfect body, but her appearance was slightly ordinary. Her eyes flashed sharply. This ordinary-looking girl was none other than Yun Jian, who was in disguise. At this time, Yun Jian raised her eyes and looked at the girl who was about 15 or 16 years old, who was also beautiful but doing the work of the lowest class. Looking closely, the girl Yun Jian was looking at was 80% similar to Yun Jian's appearance. This young girl was none other than her own daughter, Si Yuan, who had grown up. Yun Jian's eyes darkened slightly. Suddenly, she heard the latest news broadcast from a color TV in front of the dance studio. It's reported that there have been more than a dozen headless murders in Zhe Province's Longmen City. However, the murderer knows how to erase the evidence at the scene, so the police can't start the investigation. The police are still investigating. Please follow us. We'll update you as soon as there's more news. Bookhouse Reading Website. Chapter 2645. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, Part 1. Part 2. Page 1/1. After the news report came out, the other girl who was working part-time in the dance studio with Yun Jian and Si Yuan wiped the sweat on her forehead and could not help grumbling to Si Yuan, who was not far away. Headless murder case. Si Yuan, I heard that your hometown is in Zhe Province's Longmen City, right? Hearing this, Si Yuan's hand paused. A trace of imperceptible desolation appeared on her young but beautiful face. Si Yuan nodded gently at the part-time worker who was with her and continued to do her work without saying anything. This was the fate of Si Yuan and Si Wan after they grew up after Yun Jian and Si Yi's death. Yun Jian tightened her grip on the mop, but she did not say anything. Yun Jian did not go forward to acknowledge Si Yuan as her daughter, as if something was squeezing her heart. Even if she was penniless when she first came to the future world, it was easy for Yun Jian to get rich in an instant with her ability. She also had the ability to let Si Yuan live a life of luxury immediately, but she did not plan to do so. She only planned to stay by Si Yuan's side and protect her silently before she found the mysterious man. Si Yuan was captured by the mysterious man. Yun Jian and Si Yi in the future world were gone. In addition, Yun Jian and Si Yi were not the only ones who perished together with the mysterious man back then. To Si Yuan, Si Wan was her only living relative other than Qin Yiru and Gu Junjian. Now, as Si Yuan's biological brother and her pillar of support, Si Wan had left for a place where everything had yet to begin in order to change his fate. He had not returned since he left. To Si Yuan, she did not have a trustworthy friend by her side now. She had to work outside the province to make a living, which resulted in her reticent personality. There was a moment of silence after that. Sigh, I'm so tired. My mom cooked supper for me. I can go home for supper tonight. Not long after, the group of beautifully dressed young girls who were practicing in front of the mirror in the dance studio walked out. One of them stretched lazily and spoke with a relaxed expression. The girls who were dressed up were a stark contrast to Yun Jian, Si Yuan, and another worker who were sweeping the floor. The girls who were having lessons left the dance studio one after another. This meant that Yun Jian and the rest had to mop the floor of the dance studio again. Si Yuan. Let's go together. At this time, a well-dressed girl came out of the dance studio and walked in front of Si Yuan. She tilted her head at Si Yuan. The girl's name was Yuan Tianqi. She came from a rich family. Yuan Tianqi was Si Yuan's friend. She and her long legs. She was wearing a short leather shorts that just short of her butt. Si Yuan's looks. Was, the girl was is she? I haven't finished mopping the floor here. You can go first. Si Yuan looked like she wanted to go with Yuan Tianqi, but she paused and held the mop in her hand, refusing. I'll help you clean here. Go. Yun Jian took the mop from Si Yuan's hand and said, How can I? It's tiring for you to help me mop. Si Yuan was stunned and quickly said, Go play. Remember to go home early. Yun Jian did not say anything else. She just reminded her. The words go home early suddenly made Si Yuan want to cry. She wiped away her tears. What's wrong? Yun Jian saw Si Yuan wiping her tears and frowned slightly. Si Yuan saw this and quickly waved her hand at Yun Jian. Nothing. Nothing. I just feel that you look like someone I know. Very similar. She really looks like my dear mother. The mother I want to see again. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2646. 2. Page 1/1. Aya, if she's willing to do it, just let her do it for you. Aside from Yun Jian and Si Yuan, the other hourly worker saw this scene. She walked over and stuffed the mop in Si Yuan's hand into Yun Jian's hand. As the girl who worked part-time in the dance studio like Yun Jian and Si Yuan spoke, she shoved the mop she was holding into Yun Jian's hand as well. Hey, since you're helping Si Yuan, then help me too. Help me mop the floor. Don't worry, I'll take good care of Si Yuan. The girl who worked part-time in the dance studio was smart. She knew that Yun Jian was concerned about Si Yuan, so she used the latter as an excuse. Yun Jian would definitely agree to it. Yun Jian blinked. Sure enough, when she heard this hourly worker say that she would help take care of Si Yuan, she tacitly agreed. No, I can't let her do the work of 3 people by herself. You guys go play. I'll stay and mop the floor. For some reason, Si Yuan didn't want to leave. She snatched the mop back from Yun Jian's hand and insisted on going with Yun Jian. Okay, I really don't have a choice. Tianqi, let's go together? The other hourly worker said and put on a helpless expression. Then, she climbed onto Yuan Tianqi's arm. Yuan Tianqi froze, but he still nodded. Okay. This hourly worker girl didn't come from a good family. Her family didn't have money to support her, so she came out to work when she was 15 or 16 years old. The hourly worker girl's name was Gan Suya. Yuan Tianqi and Gan Suya left. Yun Jian's hand holding the mop slightly paused. She smiled from the bottom of her heart and looked at Si Yuan. Why didn't you leave? Because I can't let you be alone, Si Yuan said and took the mop from Yun Jian's hand and started mopping the floor again. After saying that, she seemed to be more cheerful in front of Yun Jian. Suddenly, she grinned at Yun Jian. Her smile was so beautiful that it was amazing. Also, I think you look like someone. That person is my mother. As she spoke, her voice became softer and softer. In the evening, Yun Jian personally sent Si Yuan to her residence and was about to leave. There was no trace of the mysterious person near the university. Yun Jian had left the university and was now temporarily living in Hezhou City of An Province. Just as Yun Jian was about to leave, Si Yuan suddenly asked her to stay. The girl who lives with me just moved out today. Do you want to move in with me? We can play games together, sleep, and count the stars. Before Si Yuan could finish, Yun Jian agreed. Okay. In the blink of an eye, it was the end. At the end of the month, after settling her salary, Si Yuan planned to give herself a day off. Coincidentally, Yuan Tianqi and Gan Suya had asked her out to play together. Si Yuan was looking forward to it very much. Si Yuan also invited Yun Jian to go with her, but Yun Jian refused. You must be home before 7 o'clock in the evening, Yun Jian said. In the future, Si Yuan did not learn martial arts from Yun Jian because she had been well protected by her family. Okay. I find that you really look like my mother. Si Yuan smiled excitedly at Yun Jian. Then she waved to Yun Jian and left the rented house to go out to play. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and smiled. Soon after Si Yuan went out, she left with her. In Huzhou City of An Province, in the home of the chairman of the most famous and powerful Tianma group in the city, the Pegasus Group had opened a Pegasus nightclub in private, and the nightclub did some unscrupulous business. At this moment, in the office of the Tianma Group, a 19-year-old girl was stepping on the shoulder of the chairman of the Tianma Group, Ma Jianhang. She forced the chairman of the Tianma Group, Ma Jianhang, to kneel down in front of her and listen to her trembling. And this girl was none other than Yun Jian. Book Guest House Reading Website. Chapter 2647. Upon closer inspection, the director of Tianma Group, Ma Jianhang, was shaking all over with sweat beading on his forehead as he knelt before Yun Jian with his head lowered. Yun Jian wore a black mask that covered her entire face. She stepped on the shoulder of Ma Jianhang, the richest and most powerful magnate in Huzhou City, like she was doing something that could not be more ordinary. Following the recent murders in Longmen City, a young girl with the codename Soul Slayer had appeared in the underworld. It was said that the girl looked to be in her teens and wore a black mask daily. Her identity was unknown and she was decisive in her killings, killing anyone she targeted. Ma Jianhang was unaware of Yun Jian's identity. He only knew that Yun Jian came to him because she was interested in his wealth. Whatever you've taken a fancy to from my company, please take it away. Please let me go. Please let me go. Ma Jianhang was pale with fright. He did not even know which corner Yun Jian had snuck into his office from. Once Yun Jian appeared, she threw him to the ground. There was a blade attached to the heel of her shoe that was stepping on his shoulder. The blade was pressed tightly against his neck. 50 million yuan. Not a cent less. Transfer it to this card. Yun Jian tossed a bank card in front of Ma Jianhang. Ma Jianhang obediently made a phone call and asked someone to transfer the money to the bank card number. Soon, Yun Jian received 50 million yuan in her account. Once the money was in her hands, Yun Jian stomped on the bank card on the ground. The card bounced up and landed in Yun Jian's palm. Holding the card, she ground the blade under her foot into the ground and kept it without a trace. At the same time, in Pegasus nightclub. See Yuan, it's true. You have to believe me. It's Tianqi who recommended it. Don't you believe me? I tried it 2 days ago. I can earn at least 200 to 300 yuan a night just by pouring drinks for people in the bar. It could even be up to 1,000 yuan. Why don't you come and work with me? This way, we won't have to work so hard to mop the floor. Gon Suya dragged Si Yuan to the Pegasus nightclub. Really? Si Yuan was indeed moved. She was just a little girl who had not experienced anything. She didn't even know what a place like a bar was. Really? Moreover, as long as you accompany them to drink, you'll get a tip. Why don't you try coming here to work for a day? I promise you won't go back to mop that dirty floor again. Gon Suya nodded her head like a rattledrum. She dragged Si Yuan into the bar. On the other side, after Yun Jian returned home, she did not see Si Yuan. It was already 7:30 in the evening. She told her to go home at 7, but she was still not back at this time. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. At this time, Si Yuan was dragged by Gon Suya to change into the professional attire of the bar. It was a mini skirt, similar to what the receptionist of a bar would wear. This skirt, isn't it too short? Si Yuan tugged at the hem of her short skirt, but it couldn't cover her beautiful white thighs. Wow! Si Yuan, your legs are too beautiful. The big bosses will definitely like your legs very much. At this time, Yuan Tianqi led a woman who was dressed very maturely into the changing room. When Yuan Tianqi saw Si Yuan, she exclaimed, her eyes shining. As he spoke, Yuan Tianqi even brought the maturely dressed woman behind him in front of Si Yuan, and then introduced her. All right, let me introduce you. This is the person in charge of the bar. Everyone calls her Sister Hong. Si Yuan, once you enter this industry, you'll really be drunk and won't want to be a floor sweeper for the rest of your life. Chapter 2648. As Yuan Tianqi spoke, he reached out and touched Si Yuan's thigh that was exposed outside the bar's business attire. He was joking with Si Yuan like they were best friends. Si Yuan only gave Yuan Tianqi a small symbolic smile, but her face was lifeless. Si Yuan had never come into contact with this before, but her innate perception gave her a bad premonition. Quick, greet Sister Hong. Yuan Tianqi said and nudged Si Yuan with his elbow, hinting at Si Yuan. Thinking that greeting should be basic etiquette, Si Yuan said to Sister Hong, "Hello, Sister Hong." Good. Good sister. You should only be 15 or 16 years old, right? You're so beautiful. Actually, Sister Hong is only a few years older than you. When I was your age, I also came out to make a living by myself. In the future, treat this place as your home. Sister Hong will protect you. Dressed in a red chong sam, Sister Hong walked towards Si Yuan leisurely. She was wearing a smoky makeup and high heels that were more than 10 centimeters tall. When she walked in front of Si Yuan, Sister Hong reached out and grabbed Si Yuan's arm, making Si Yuan's heart feel warm. However, Si Yuan still took 2 steps back without a trace. Whether it was Yuan Tianqi, Gon Suya, or Sister Hong, they all gave Si Yuan a very warm feeling. But why did she still feel that being with the people in front of her wasn't as comfortable as being with Yun Jian? Tick-tock, tick-tock. Si Yuan was silent for 2 minutes. Suddenly, she heard the crisp sound of the clock turning. She raised her head and looked at the clock hanging on the wall in front of the changing room. The time on the clock was a little past 7:30. It's already 7:30. I should go home. Si Yuan looked at the clock, turned around, and wanted to go into the changing room to take off her clothes and go home. Aya, what's the rush? Si Yuan, no one is waiting for you to go home anyway. It's only 7 o'clock. It's still early. Let's play for a while before going back. Let Sister Hong take you to get used to your new job. Yuan Tianqi saw this and reached out to grab Si Yuan. He even gave Gon Suya a sidelong glance. Seeing this, Gon Suya smiled and walked over to grab Si Yuan, urging her to stay. That's right. Play for a while before going back. We'll send you home later. Yuan Tianqi and Gon Suya tried their best to persuade her to stay. In addition, Sister Hong said that this was a good job. If Si Yuan didn't stay tonight to apply for the job, she wouldn't have another chance. There were many people lining up to get this easy and lucrative job, so Si Yuan agreed to stay. Can you lend me your phone? I want to make a call. And Chi is still waiting for me at home. She said that I have to be home by 7 o'clock. Si Yuan spoke again. And Chi was Yun Jian's fake name. Si Yuan, Yuan Tianqi, and Gon Suya all referred to Yun Jian as An Chi. And Chi isn't your parents. Do you think you'll go home when she tells you to? We don't have our phones with us. All right, let's go. I'll explain it to her when I go back tonight. Yuan Tianqi pushed Si Yuan and pulled her out of the changing room with a half-hearted refusal. Standing in the empty rented apartment, Yun Jian's face gradually darkened. 7:35. Si Yuan had always been an obedient child. It had been so long since the scheduled time and she still hadn't returned home. Yun Jian stood up from the sofa and walked to the door. She opened the door and left the rented apartment. The future world had undergone earth-shaking changes because of the death of the future Yun Jian and Ce. In 2004, Yun Jian only needed to make a phone call to investigate a person's whereabouts. But in 2019, without power, it wasn't so easy for her to investigate a person. Of course, everything that wasn't easy, even if she had to start from scratch and start all over again, in Yun Jian's hands, it would become a piece of cake. After being threatened by Yun Jian, the chairman of the Tianma Group, Ma Jianhang, couldn't recover from the shock for a long time. At this time, Ma Jianhang was hugging a naked woman with ample breasts and buttocks. Because they were tired after hard work, they both laid on the bed and prepared to go to sleep early. It was pitch black all around. Just as Ma Jianhang heaved a sigh of relief and was about to fall asleep, a ghost-like figure suddenly appeared on the balcony outside the curtains. Who's there? Ma Jianhang inadvertently caught a glimpse of this figure and was so scared that his lips and teeth turned white. Just as Ma Jianhang was so scared that all his muscles tensed up, a female voice that scared Ma Jianhang so much during the day that he almost peed his pants and would never forget until his death suddenly sounded from the balcony outside the curtains. Old thing, I'll give you 1 minute to get dressed and get out here. Chapter 2649. Ma Jianhang would remember this voice for the rest of his life. That woman lifted her foot, and a blade suddenly flew out of her heel. The scene of her holding it against his neck was like a decisive killer. Ma Jianhang was so scared that he jumped out of bed. He even forgot to pretend to be a gentleman in front of his mistress and quickly put on his clothes. As he ran, he crawled to open the curtains and the balcony door. Like a big wolf dog that had lost its arrogance, he bent down and looked at Yun Jian, obeying her orders. Pegasus Nightclub. At this moment, Si Yuan, who was wearing a bar attire, was pulled to the door of a large private room. Gon Suya had also changed into a bar attire at some point. Sister Hong and Yuan Tianqi stood next to Si Yuan and Gon Suya. Sister Hong was constantly reminding Si Yuan, "Good sister, you've just arrived. Learn more from Suya. Today, all the people in the room are big bosses. Their net worth is in the hundreds of millions. Don't make them unhappy." Yesterday, the new girl in our bar, Xiao Lan, received a tip of 3,000 yuan from the big bosses just by drinking with them. You too learn to be smarter. Sister Hong twisted her waist and warned them. As she spoke, Sister Hong glanced at Si Yuan and asked, "Good sister, have you been in love before?" As soon as she asked this, Sister Hong saw a trace of desolation flash through Si Yuan's eyes. N. After softly replying to Sister Hong, Si Yuan didn't say anything else. Si Yuan thought of Zhou Iran, who had protected her since she was young. But he had already protected her. Holding back the tears that were about to fall, Si Yuan clenched her fists and pretended to be calm. Okay, quickly go in." A different color flashed through Sister Hong's eyes. In the next second, she urged her. Si Yuan turned her head and secretly wiped her tears. She pushed the door open and entered the private room with a tray of wine. Sister Hong smiled as she watched Si Yuan and Gon Suya enter the private room. After the door closed, Sister Hong's smile instantly dimmed. This one already has a boyfriend. She's definitely not a virgin. Sister Hong said to Yuan Tianqi, who was standing on the side. Then if he doesn't comply later, we can directly inject him? Yuan Tianqi raised an eyebrow. Take care of this matter well. I'll give you a reward later. Hong Jie nodded towards Yuan Tianqi. She crossed her arms and looked through the door of the large private room to observe the situation inside. As soon as Si Yuan walked into the big box, her ears were ringing from the deafening noise in the box. She subconsciously took a big step back. Follow me later and don't run around. Obviously, it was not Gon Suya's first time here. She moved closer to Si Yuan and whispered to her. After that, Gon Suya smiled and walked towards the group of big bosses in front of her with a tray of wine. At first, Si Yuan and Gon Suya just stood aside and poured wine. Si Yuan also naively thought that this was just a job to pour wine. But as the atmosphere became more and more lively, the big bosses sat in the private room and held up their microphones to sing loudly at the screen. As they sang, one of the big bosses, who was big and burly, reached out his hand to touch Si Yuan's thigh. He was so big that he looked like he was 5 months pregnant. Perhaps she had inherited Yun Jian and Si Yi's excellent genes, but Si Yuan's innate reaction speed was extremely fast. She quickly dodged the second the big boss's hand was about to touch her thigh. This move instantly attracted the big boss's dissatisfaction. Hong! The big boss immediately shouted. He opened his mouth and wanted to call Hong Jie, who was outside the private room, to come in. Before the word Hong could be heard, Gon Suya took the opportunity to replace Si Yuan. She turned around, endured the disgust in her heart, and sat in the big boss's seat. Gon Suya took a sliced banana from the table in the private room and stuffed it into the big boss's mouth. Then she pulled her red lips. Bossly, she is a newcomer. You are a generous person, so don't lower yourself to her level. When Gon Suya was sweeping the floor in the dance studio, she was quite scheming. She knew how to take advantage of Yun Jian's kindness to Si Yuan to sweep the mop for Yun Jian. But at this moment, Gon Suya's action saved Si Yuan again. It should be known that if you angered this group of big bosses, it would not be over just by quitting this job. In the future, you would have to bear the consequences in Huzhou City. So you are a newcomer. I was wondering why you were so insensible. The bald man in his 40s or 50s, who was called Boss Li, grabbed Gon Suya's chest and stared straight at Si Yuan. White Horse Nightclub, in the name of a bar. Actually, the waitresses who entered here could be taken away as long as you could pay the price. They clearly marked the price for a night. M. Chapter 2650. Si Yuan was stunned by the scene in front of her. No matter how insensible she was, Si Yuan should know what was going on. I'm going to the toilet. Si Yuan immediately thought of a way to escape. She gave everyone a fake smile, but in her heart, she was already thinking of how to escape. Fortunately, no one stopped her from going to the toilet. After Si Yuan walked out of the private room, she ran to the toilet as fast as she could. At this time, Sister Hong walked out from the corner. She looked in the direction Si Yuan left and said to the thugs standing beside her, "Follow her." Yes. The group of thugs accepted the order and chased after Si Yuan. Sister Hong dodged and entered the private room of the bar. She swayed her butt and came to Boss Li. She replaced Gon Suya and sat on Boss Li's lap. She said to Boss Li with a seductive look, "How is it? Boss Li, are you satisfied with that girl just now?" Boss Li heard Sister Hong's words and revealed a wretched smile. Satisfied. Extremely satisfied. If she doesn't listen later, I'll inject her with a bucket of that thing. Once that thing is injected into her body, she won't be able to control it. In the future, she will definitely be the most lascivious woman in my bar. Sister Hong smiled and drew a few circles on Boss Li's chest. Judging from her appearance, she must be the prettiest barroom princess in your restaurant. Boss Li could almost imagine that scene. Meanwhile, Si Yuan had already reached the toilet. She looked around the toilet and didn't find a way to escape. Helplessly, she stayed in the toilet for a long time before peeping around. Seeing that there was no one around, she ran frantically to the bar's entrance. However, just as she ran 2 steps, she was attacked by a few men from the side. Si Yuan had practiced with Zhou Iran before. She dodged twice, but she was soon at a disadvantage. She was caught. Si Yuan didn't have any physical training because Yun Jian and Si Yi spoiled her too much. Coupled with Zhou Iran's care, Si Yuan had lived a very good life since she was young. Let go. Let go of me. It's illegal to catch people like this. Si Yuan struggled and was caught in the private room. Inside the private room, Sister Hong looked at Si Yuan with her legs crossed. Seeing that Si Yuan was still frantically struggling, she stepped forward in her red high heels and slapped Si Yuan a few times. You still want to escape after entering my Pegasus nightclub? Sister Hong slapped Si Yuan's face, leaving a few red palm prints, before stopping. Yes, yes. Yuan Tianqi hurriedly nodded. Hold her down and inject her. Sister Hong no longer pretended and immediately revealed her ugliest face. Immediately, someone walked towards Si Yuan with a large syringe. Gon Suya was so scared that she shrank to the side and trembled. The few big bosses looked at him with a meaningful look. Girls who did not have parents by their side were usually unwilling to come out after being tricked into such places. That's right. Other than accidentally ingesting drugs, they could also be forcibly injected into the body. It was just like the syringe the doctor gave you when you were getting an injection in the hospital. The only difference was that this syringe contained drugs. Once injected with drugs, the person's life would be over. If Si Yuan was injected with drugs, she would definitely be addicted to the taste of drugs. At this time, not to mention having sex with someone casually in exchange for drugs, even if she had to break her hands and feet, when the drug addiction came up, it was possible for her to do it. Forced injection of drugs. They only dared to do this because Si Yuan was an orphan. But the people around them only watched and remained silent. Some were even gloating. The big bosses were eager to make a move. They even began to discuss how they would share Si Yuan's delicacy later. Just as Sister Hong's subordinate was about to inject the drugs into Si Yuan's arm with the syringe, the door of the private room was violently smashed open. The person who was smashed into the room was a nightclub waiter. What's going on? Sister Hong's eyes moved. Just as Sister Hong's eyes flickered, a tall and slender figure stepped into the room. The moment they saw Yun Jian, Gon Suya and Yuan Tianqi almost cried out in surprise. Sister Hong even muttered, "Where did this ugly girl come from? Hurry up and chase her out." Just as she said that, Yun Jian had already made her way to Sister Hong's thug who was about to inject Si Yuan with a syringe in his hand. Quick! Hurry up and catch her! Sister Hong shouted when she saw this. But just as Sister Hong finished speaking, Yun Jian suddenly flipped her hands. 10 razor blades appeared between her fingers. She didn't even look at the razor blades in her hand. The razor blades flew out and directly slashed the necks of Sister Hong's subordinates in front of everyone present. In the next second, the 10 subordinates stopped breathing and fell to the ground one after another. She killed someone. Sister Hong was thoroughly frightened. She frantically retreated backwards, together with Yuan Tianqi and the other bosses. They all retreated to a corner of the room where they couldn't retreat any further. You, who exactly are you? Someone come. She killed someone. She killed someone. Just as Sister Hong was screaming in fear, Yun Jian's lips curved into a red arc. In the next second, she tore off her mask in front of everyone, revealing her original face. Exquisite and beautiful, it was a stunning face that was 80% similar to Si Yuan's. But what frightened everyone and made them tremble was not Yun Jian's beautiful face, but Yun Jian took light steps and stood in front of everyone who was huddled in the corners of the private room. Just as Si Yuan's face was covered in tears and everyone's faces were pale from fright, she suddenly spoke. Congratulations, you're about to become the 17th headless murder victim of Slaying God's return. Chapter 2651. The 17th victim of the headless murder case. The headless murder case. The eerie voice that came out of Yun Jian's mouth made everyone's eyes widen. Especially when Yun Jian killed 10 living people with a blade in a single move. It was eerie and cruel. Sister Hong, Yuan Tianqi, and the few big bosses who were sitting in the room and waiting with wretched expressions for Si Yuan to be injected with drugs and let them do whatever they wanted were all curled up in the corners of the room. They looked like they were dying to hide in the corner of the room so that they could escape. Headless murder case. Who are you? Yuan Tianqi's eyes bulged like a dead fish's as she glared at Yun Jian, her face pale. 2019 was the era of internet technology. In this day and age, even the slightest thing that happened could be transmitted to the internet and become popular overnight. In short, even a small matter could spread across the globe. The dozens of headless murder cases in Longmen City that even the police with modern technology could not investigate had long spread across the country, arousing suspicions among the netizens. Right now, the murderer of the headless murder case was standing in front of everyone, killing 10 of Sister Hong's subordinates in one move. Everyone present was indescribably shocked. What was more shocking was that it was not slaying God. Unlike Sister Hong, Yuan Tianqi, and the rest, one of the bosses finally reacted and exclaimed in shock. Could it be the top international secret agent who was reported dead 3 years ago, slaying God? After the boss exclaimed, another boss who was huddled in the corner reacted immediately and was scared out of his wits. Who was slaying God? Slaying God had been popular in the assassin secret agent world for decades. Her name alone was enough to scare people out of their wits. She was already dead and was once the pinnacle of existence in the world, a king that no one could reach. She had suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Those who weren't present at the scene would never be able to understand this kind of shock. We didn't see anything. We didn't see anything. We have no grudge against you. Please be magnanimous and show mercy. We can give you anything you want. Please let us go. In the private room, the most senior and most powerful boss among the group of big bosses suddenly crawled to Yun Jian from the corner of the private room like an animal and knelt down in front of Yun Jian. This boss was the one who wanted to take advantage of Si Yuan when she first entered the room. Originally, it was as glorious as it could be, but now, it was as pathetic as it could be. Yes, we have no enmity with you. Sister Hong pulled out a smile that was uglier than a crying face. Just as she was about to speak to Yun Jian. Mom. A trembling voice that was filled with disbelief and wild joy suddenly rang out. At this moment, everyone turned to look at the person who had spoken. However, Si Yuan threw herself into Yun Jian's arms and cried, Mom! I miss your mother so much. Slaying God, Mommy? Then Si Yuan is? However, slaying God looked like she was only 19 years old. What was going on? Just as Yun Jian gently placed her head on Si Yuan's head and gave it a gentle rub, she lifted her foot slightly and stepped on the head of the boss who had just pounced on her and begged for mercy. In almost a second, she stepped on the boss's head and kicked it to the right. With a gotcha sound, the boss was directly sent to hell by the strange force of the kick before he could react. Dead. To Yun Jian, This scene was as skillful as cooking, but to the crowd, it struck fear into their hearts. At the same time, Yoon Jian caressed Si Yuan's head and curled her lips into a faint smile that sent everyone into the prison of death. Next, whose turn is it? Chapter 2652. If it was said that the bosses in the room came to this kind of nightclub because they liked to play, then Yoon Jian's killing method just now was definitely the most frightening thing these bosses had ever seen in their lives. It was countless times more frightening than the exaggerated killing methods in the movies. Don't kill us. No. Si Yuan, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I really didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted you to earn more money. Let me go. I beg you. Let me go. I really know I was wrong. Yuan Tianqi saw everything that happened in front of her clearly. When she saw the boss kneeling in front of Yoon Jian being stepped on by Yoon Jian on the fatal point of his head and killed instantly, she was so scared that her lips and teeth were trembling violently. She desperately pulled at the hem of Yoon Jian's clothes and shrank behind her. Her legs were weak, and she was 5 centimeters away from kneeling in front of Yoon Jian. She wanted to use Si Yuan to make Yoon Jian let her go. However, Yuan Tianqi saw hatred in Si Yuan's eyes. Si Yuan, who grew up beside Yoon Jian and Ce, wasn't a rich young lady who couldn't bear to see a drop of blood. Although she didn't usually deal with things personally, she had seen plenty of bloody things. Hence, when Yoon Jian dealt with this group of people one by one, Si Yuan's face didn't reveal any fear. Yuan Tianqi didn't dare to approach Yoon Jian at all, afraid that she would end up like the boss who knelt in front of Yoon Jian just now. However, she saw that Si Yuan didn't want to pay attention to her at all, so she shrank back to Hong Jie's side. Hong. Hong Jie, save me. Yuan Tianqi was almost scared to death. She desperately grabbed Hong Jie's hand and begged. Hiding in a corner, Hong Jie had actually already sent out a text message. It was to ask her superiors to call for reinforcements. After being pulled by Yuan Tianqi, Sister Hong was afraid that Yuan Tianqi would implicate her, so she fiercely pushed Yuan Tianqi in front of Yoon Jian. She wanted to use this to stall for time so that she could save herself. Yuan Tianqi was abruptly pushed in front of Yoon Jian. She was so scared that her face was smudged, and her foundation was soaked in sweat. Don't kill me. After being pushed in front of Yoon Jian, Yuan Tianqi was so scared that he was like a tortoise that desperately flipped over. His hands and feet were frantically flapping about, fearing that Yoon Jian would touch a certain part of his body and kill him. His posture of being slapped by the wind was no different from a job-hopping clown. Just as Yuan Tianqi was frantically flailing his arms and legs in an attempt to stop Yoon Jian from approaching him, suddenly, a group of people walked in from outside the big box. When she saw that the person leading the group was her solid backer, Sister Hong rushed to him almost immediately. Brother Li, save me. Save me. The leader, who was called Brother Li, pushed Sister Hong away without a trace. With a very respectful posture, he invited the handsome man walking behind him into the box. Sister Hong suddenly remembered that Brother Li had once told her that Brother Li was working with a very mysterious big boss. Could it be the handsome man who had just walked into the private room? Brother Hearing had boasted that this mysterious big boss behind the scenes was even more powerful than Slaying God, who was ranked first on the international secret agent ranking. When she turned her head and saw this handsome man walk into the room, Sister Hong felt that she was saved. She cleared her throat and spoke to the handsome man. She pointed at Yoon Jian in the room and said loudly with a half-smile, "You're here to save us, right? She's the one who's causing trouble. Please." Before Sister Hong could finish, Si Yuan, who stood beside Yoon Jian, dashed to the handsome man and grabbed his hand, telling him tearfully, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. Dad. Chapter 2653. Dad. Si Yuan. She actually called this handsome man who looked to be in his 20s father. What was wrong with this world? Everyone's face, including Sister Hong's, instantly turned pale. Dad? Brother Li. Sister Hong's face gradually turned pale. She had a very bad feeling about this. At this moment, Sister Hong was looking at Brother Li, seeking an answer. Brother Li glared at Sister Hong fiercely. He bent down and smiled at Ce. My slaves here didn't do it on purpose. You see. Although Brother Li glared at Sister Hong fiercely, He still pleaded with CE in private for Sister Hong's sake. Bang! CE didn't say anything. He took out a silver pistol from his waist. Without even looking, he aimed the gun at Brother Lee's head and shot him in the head. After that, CE lifted his leg and kicked Brother Lee's corpse out of the room. He then looked at Si Yuan from the corner of his eyes. Are you okay? CE could be so gentle to Yun Jian that it made people's hearts ache. However, CE was like Yun Jian to Si Yuan. They were both from 2004. To CE, it was as simple as seeing a 15-year-old daughter as one of his own. Dad, I'm fine. Si Yuan nodded heavily. Her tears were falling, and there was even a string of snot on her nose. She looked quite cute. It wasn't hard to explain why Si Yuan could recognize Yun Jian and CE at a glance. Yun Jian was the sorcerer goddess of Yulong mainland, and CE was the lord of gods mainland. The immortal cultivators of the mainland could generally live for more than 1,000 years. Some of the more powerful ones could even live forever. For humans, 15 years could change a person's appearance from young to old. However, for Yun Jian and CE, this didn't exist. Because 3 years ago, in 2016, they still maintained their youthful appearance. Sister Hong had not expected that her only savior, Brother Lee, would be killed by CE in a single shot the moment he arrived. Her expression could not be described with just one word. You all. As Sister Hong spoke, she retreated backwards. Her face was so pale that it could not be any paler. Yuan Tianqi struggled as he retreated to a corner of the room. At this time, Si Yuan pulled CE to Yun Jian's side. She pulled Yun Jian's hand over and placed it on top of CE's hand. Dad, Mom, you're still alive. That's great. As she spoke, Si Yuan wanted to cry again. Yun Jian raised her hand to wipe away Si Yuan's tears and cast a sharp glance at Hong Jie and Yuan Tianqi. After dealing with these, I'll take you out for supper. Huzhou City, a roadside barbecue shop. Si Yuan sat inside the barbecue shop with a skewer in each hand. She looked like she hadn't eaten such delicious food in a long time. She ate in big bites while drinking Sprite. Seeing Yun Jian and CE looking at her, Si Yuan wiped her face and said to Yun Jian and CE, Dad, Mom, you guys eat too. As she spoke, Si Yuan picked up 2 skewers of mutton and gave one to Yun Jian and one to CE. Needless to say, after growing up, Si Yuan really had the urge to pinch her cheeks. She was very cute. Judging from her appearance, Yun Jian was not much older than Si Yuan and so was CE. Therefore, when the young man selling skewers heard Si Yuan's words, his foot, which was holding a plate of skewers, slipped. He stopped in time and couldn't help but shout at Si Yuan, What the hell? Are you playing house? Wonderful book house. Chapter 2654. This young man was tall and thin, but he didn't look good. His nose was a little flat, and his mouth was a little crooked. So when he said this, Si Yuan was amused. This is my dad, and this is my mom. What do you think? Young enough. Si Yuan couldn't help showing off. As she spoke, Si Yuan thought of another person. She bent down and nibbled on the mutton skewer in her hand. Suddenly, she didn't want to talk anymore. Fine. I'm old. I don't understand the games of young people. The young man brought the barbecue plate to Yun Jian and Si Yi's table. He scratched his head and continued to work on his barbecue. Next, we have news. The Pegasus nightclub in Huzhou City in An province suddenly caught fire. Just now, fire trucks were sent to rescue, but because the fire was too big and too fierce, many people were still trapped inside and couldn't be rescued. Currently, further rescue efforts are underway. Hopefully, more people can be rescued. For the latest news, please pay attention to our TV station. We will report the details as soon as possible. The TV in the barbecue restaurant that was originally playing cartoons suddenly broadcast such news. Everyone sitting around heard it. The Pegasus nightclub was a popular place for men in Huzhou City to pass time. The girls here were clearly priced. If you had the money, you could take them away. The reason why such a place wasn't closed down was because of the power and influence. Now that such a thing happened, the people sitting in the barbecue restaurant started to talk. The Pegasus nightclub. How could it burn down just like that? Hey, you don't understand. Most likely they met an enemy. The girls in the Pegasus nightclub are all very beautiful. It's a pity that it was burned down. The vulgar discussions of a few bachelors at the table next to them could be heard. Yun Jian, Ce, and Si Yuan ignored them. Needless to say, she was the one who set the fire. Yun Jian didn't let go of anyone who participated in the murder of Si Yuan. Si Yuan didn't ask about the arrival of Yun Jian and Ce. In fact, when Si Yuan left, Si Yuan knew that Si Yuan went to the past and wanted to change history. Now, Ce already knew the identities and backgrounds of Yun Jian and Ce. As she ate the barbecue skewers in her mouth, the forced smile on her face slowly disappeared. She raised her head abruptly and said to Yun Jian and Ce, "Dad, Mom, it's so good to see you again." At the end of her speech, Si Yuan seemed to recall something and her tone suddenly became choked with sobs. Yun Jian patted Si Yuan's back. She didn't know how to comfort the child, so she just asked, "What's wrong?" "Dad, Mom, can you not leave me? I'm afraid that everyone will leave me. I don't want to be alone anymore. That guy Zhou Iran once said that he would stay by my side and protect me, but he still left. He died for me. I don't want to wander alone anymore." Sob, sob, sob. Si Yuan suddenly gave up her fake smile, buried her head on the table, and burst into tears. Just as Si Yuan was burying her head in the ground and bursting into tears, she suddenly felt someone pressing on her shoulder. Then, her head was lifted up by someone's hand. When she saw the person who had once died to save her appear in front of her, Si Yuan was stunned. The person who came was none other than Zhou Iran, who was supposed to be dead. Back then, Zhou Iran had pulled Si Yuan's hand into his embrace right in front of Ce and Yun Jian. He ignored Ce's sharp gaze that swept over and rubbed Si Yuan's head, telling her, "What's the matter?" "Silly, how could I die? Don't forget, you promised me before that you would be my wife." Chapter 26:55. Her head was suddenly pushed up by someone. She heard the magnetic voice of the man she thought had died for her. Si Yuan's head swayed for a while. Zhou Iran, who was in his 20s, had already grown up to be fresh and handsome. His youthful appearance had faded away. The current Zhou Iran was no longer the immature little kid from before. Even when he stood next to Ce, he was not inferior in terms of height. Zhou Iran, you big bastard, you didn't die? Do you know how sad I was when I saw you die? Why didn't you die, you big bastard? Si Yuan's body froze when Zhou Iran suddenly pulled her into his arms. When she came back to her senses, she hit Zhou Iran's chest twice with all her might. Tears streamed down her face. After Si Yuan hit his chest twice, Zhou Iran cracked a smile. He reached out and gently placed his hand on Si Yuan's head. He comforted her but did not say anything. Just as Zhou Iran placed his hand on Si Yuan's head and gently stroked it, his collar was suddenly pulled back. Ce, who was originally sitting with Yun Jian, was now standing behind Zhou Iran. She practically grabbed Zhou Iran's collar and pulled him away from Si Yuan. "Sit over there." Ce mercilessly dragged Zhou Iran to a bench a few seats away from Si Yuan. His eyes were cold. "Dad, what are you doing?" Si Yuan saw Zhou Iran being pulled away by Ce. She pouted and wiped away her tears. She was not pretentious. Ce looked like he was only in his 20s. However, he was called Dad by a 16-year-old girl. The people around the barbecue shop looked at him strangely. Ce did not respond to Yun Jian's words. He took a lamb skewer, which was Yun Jian's favorite, from the barbecue plate and personally delivered it to Yun Jian's mouth. Ce and Yun Jian were from 2004 to 2019, so they didn't get along with their daughter, Si Yuan, and they weren't very close. However, blood ties could not be broken. When Zhou Iran hugged Ce in front of her, Ce instinctively grabbed Zhou Iran's collar and pulled him behind her. "Mom, Dad is bullying me." Seeing that Ce was ignoring her, Si Yuan sat on the stool and slowly moved to Yun Jian's side. Then, she reached out and grabbed Yun Jian's arm. She pouted and looked aggrieved. Yun Jian didn't say anything. She raised her eyebrows and rubbed Ce's head. She glared at Ce and didn't take the mutton skewers that Ce handed over to her. She was giving face to Ce on behalf of Ce. Si Yuan understood Yun Jian, and she understood Ce even more. She knew that once her mother did that, her father would. Sure enough, Siyi's face immediately darkened. Looking at her expression, she wasn't happy at all. Mom, I want to sleep with you tonight. Okay, Si-Yuan had already grabbed Yunjian's arm and put her head on Yunjian's shoulder. She looked like she wouldn't give up until she snatched Yunjian from Si. Okay. What made Siyi's face even more gloomy was that Yunjian actually nodded in agreement. No. After Yunjian agreed, Si immediately said with a sullen face. His voice was so loud that all the customers in the barbecue shop turned to look. However, Si didn't care. Why, Dad, I'll just borrow her for a day and return her to you tomorrow. I'm scared to sleep alone today, I think of them when I close my eyes now. Si-Yuan shook Yunjian's arm and acted coquettishly to Si. Of course, she was referring to the people who were involved in the incident at Pegasus nightclub. After Si-Yuan finished speaking, she knew that with Si's pampering personality, she would definitely agree. However, just as she finished speaking, Si grabbed the confused Zhou Yiran and pushed him in front of Si-Yuan. He'll sleep with you tonight. Don't steal my woman. Chapter 2656. The moment Si said this, Zhou Yiran, who was still thinking, was completely dumbfounded. Huh! Zhou Yiran had his hand on his head and was deep in thought. Now that he heard Si's words, he seemed to have been struck by lightning. He stood rooted to the ground, stunned. The future Si doted on Si-Yuan a lot. He gave Si-Yuan whatever she wanted. Everyone said that Si doted on Si-Yuan to the heavens. However, he was very strict with Si-Yuan. For example, she was not allowed to stay out at night. She had to be home before dark at 7 p.m. She was not allowed to hold hands with men. She was not allowed to have intimate contact with men. He was as strict as he could be. The future Si wanted Si-Yuan to be obedient even if he had to give Yunjian to her for a day. However, the 2004 Si actually pushed Zhou Yiran to Si-Yuan. Si-Yuan. Zhou Yiran. Dad, you weren't like this in the past. Although Si-Yuan knew that Si was from 2004, she could not help but smile when she heard Si's words. Ahem. Zhou Yiran scratched his head calmly. Then I'll accept your offer. Zhou Yiran would not let go of such a good opportunity. Zhou Yiran had been taught by his father since he was young. If you wanted a woman, don't say anything. Take her as your own first. Adam had instilled this idea in Zhou Yiran since he was young. He even told Zhou Yiran that he had forcefully taken over Lan Su and forced Lan Su to be with him in the end. However, the future Si protected Si-Yuan too well and did not give Zhou Yiran a chance to make a move. Zhou Yiran would never have thought that it would not be him playing tricks this time. It would be Si who would personally send his daughter to his bed. Dad, I don't want to. When Si-Yuan heard that Si wanted her to sleep in the same room as Zhou Yiran, her first reaction was to be shy and then resist. Although Si-Yuan did have thoughts of being closer to Zhou Yiran than treating him as an older brother, she did have the feelings of a young girl towards Zhou Yiran. But to sleep in the same room as Zhou Yiran, wasn't this? Was he going to discover the secret that she didn't want to tell anyone during her teenage years? Then I'll sleep alone. Si remained expressionless the entire time. Please don't, Dad. I'm really scared. Si-Yuan held Yunjian's hand, looking aggrieved. However, no matter how aggrieved she felt, Si would not let go. Yunjian sat at the side and smiled faintly. Yunjian and the others were sitting at the barbecue restaurant's table. They were surrounded by large tents, and Yunjian and the others were sitting in a corner. Even if people passed by, they wouldn't notice them. After the barbecue was served, Si started discussing business with Zhou Yiran. Yunjian and Si had been in 2019 for a short period of time, but in fact, it hadn't been long. It had only been 1 or 2 months. Si was indeed the leader of Enhan. In just 1 or 2 months, Si returned to the international scene and directly took back all of Enhan's scattered forces. Her speed was so fast that Yuan Xing and Zhou Yiran, who were leading the way, were shocked. Yes, except for Si and Xingfeng who didn't die. Yuan Xing and Zhou Yiran both survived. However, Zhou Yiran faked his own death in order to secretly investigate the mysterious person. Of course, Zhou Yiran had secretly sent people to protect Si-Yuan for the past 3 years. However, because he was afraid that the mysterious person would notice, he didn't dare to show up or protect her too tightly. At this moment, Zhou Yiran was telling CE all the information he had investigated over the years to CE. Chapter 2657. I've searched all over the world. The mysterious man is currently residing in Jia Province's Longmen City. There was no one around, but for safety's sake, Zhou Yiran lowered his voice and spoke to CE softly. Si Yuan was still like a child. She ate the skewers in big bites. The oil on the skewers dripped down and landed on her collar. Yun Jian was wiping the oil that had dripped onto Si Yuan's collar with a tissue. While she was wiping the oil off Si Yuan's collar, Yun Jian was also listening to Zhou Yiran. Zhou Yiran had already said this to CE. He repeated it this time mainly for Yun Jian. There must be a hiding place for the mysterious man somewhere in Country Z's Longmen City. According to his understanding of you, this mysterious man is probably someone who has been lurking in Longmen City since Aunt Yun Jian was reborn. In other words, before the mysterious man became a mysterious man, he knew everything that happened to Aunt Yun Jian in the future like the back of his hand. So now, we only need to start from the people Aunt Yun Jian came into contact with in Longmen City before. Zhou Yiran had obtained sufficient evidence, which was why he said those words. Yun Jian's eyes narrowed. First of all, the mysterious man was not a mysterious man from the beginning. He was just an ordinary human on Earth in the beginning. This was the first point. After the mystery man became the mystery man in the future world, he returned to the mystery continent. Ambition swallowed him up, and he was not satisfied with that. So in order to get rid of the sovereign god of the gods continent, he ambushed the sorcerer goddess, whom the sovereign god admired. It was then that the witch goddess was rescued by the Lord God and unintentionally went to Earth. On Earth in this era, he who had yet to become a mysterious man was still an ordinary person. The two dimensions were in disarray. As the witch goddess, Yun Jian must have met the mysterious man who had yet to become a mysterious man. The future could be changed. When the mysterious man returned to the beginning of the divine continent, he changed the future of the divine continent as well as himself. That was to say, before he became the mysterious man, he met Yun Jian and learned more about Yun Jian. Therefore, after becoming a mysterious man, he basically knew Yun Jian's future. This was the key. Therefore, it was both simple and complicated to find the mysterious man. First, they had to list all the people Yun Jian had come into contact with when she was reborn in Longmen City. Secondly, he had to find someone who knew Yun Jian's whereabouts from the list. That person might be the mysterious man. As long as you know who the mysterious man is, Uncle CE and Aunt Yun Jian, you can immediately go back 15 years and kill the mysterious man before he became the mysterious man. Then, none of this would have happened. Zhou Yiran's mind was very clear. He quickly sorted out a list of disgust and told it to Yun Jian and CE. Stepping through the door of time and space, a person could change history. The disarray of time and space was not non-existent. If you changed history alone, the future would be changed as well. When the people in the future discovered the door of time and space, the original historical trajectory would be turned upside down. Zhou Yiran did not know that it was because he was so young but had such a bright mind that CE asked him to sleep with her at night. Chapter 2658. What are you talking about? Why can't I understand a single word? Si Yuan was still young. She took a bite of the freshly cooked sausage and tilted her head to look at Zhou Yiran. Then, she looked at Yun Jian and CE with a face full of confusion. She looked cute and ignorant. I'm here. You don't need to understand these things. Zhou Yiran's hand was very long, and his knuckles were unusually long. He reached out and rubbed CE's head in front of her as he spoke. Oh! Being rubbed by Zhou Yiran in front of her parents, Si Yuan's face instantly flushed red. She lowered her head and did not dare to look at Zhou Yiran's face because she was too shy. Yun Jian tapped the table twice with her fingers. She frowned slightly. After a while she suddenly said, I remember all the people I've met clearly. Tomorrow, I'll write down all the information of all the people I've met. Leave this to me. Yun Jian's memory was very good. This was not an exaggeration. A person would meet many people in a lifetime, but except for most of the important people, it was difficult to remember all the people who had appeared around you clearly. But Yun Jian could. Since the mysterious man must be someone close to her, she would be able to find out the identity of the mysterious man before he dealt with her. Then, she would dare to go back to 2004 and kill him before he became the mysterious man. Okay, Aunt Yunjian, I'll leave this matter to you. After you've sorted out all the information of the people you've met, I'll analyze it and narrow down the target. Zhou Yiran said to Yunjian. Yunjian was still a little surprised by Zhou Yiran's analytical ability. Although she was surprised, the more capable Zhou Yiran was, the more assured Yunjian and Ce would be to leave Si Yuan in Zhou Yiran's care. Tsk, Yunjian and the other two were talking about important matters. The grease from Si Yuan's barbecue splashed everywhere. In the end, it even splashed onto Zhou Yiran's clothes, who was sitting quite far away from her. Coincidentally, Zhou Yiran's clothes were splattered with grease from the skewers in Si Yuan's hands. However, Zhou Yiran did not have the slightest intention of blaming Si Yuan. On the contrary, he looked at Si Yuan with doting eyes. At night, because Si Yuan was scared, she kept pestering Yunjian to sleep with her. In the end, Ce dragged Zhou Yiran in front of Si Yuan, while Ce hugged Yunjian's shoulders and went back to the room. I hate Daddy the most. Humph. Si Yuan snorted and shouted at Ce's back. After giving Zhou Yiran one last look, she suddenly ran back into her room. Zhou Yiran touched his nose. He had no intention of going back to his room just because he was a gentleman. After 20 minutes, Zhou Yiran opened the door to Si Yuan's bedroom. Si Yuan had already showered, and the fragrance of a young girl continuously wafted into his nose. Zhou Yiran, why did you come in, you big baddie? Get out, get out. Si Yuan was wearing pajamas. Her hands were on her waist, and she looked like she wanted to chase Zhou Yiran away. Your dad asked me to accompany you. Zhou Yiran smiled, looking like he was forced by Ce to come here to look for Si Yuan. Si Yuan was still a little scared. After all, she had suffered too much at night. Finally, she pouted. Then you have to leave after I fall asleep. You have to. These words made Zhou Yiran's lips curl up again. He smiled devilishly. Okay. He would leave after she fell asleep. That was impossible. But he would not let Si Yuan hear this. At this moment, Si Yuan was shy because she did not wear underwear after showering. Like Yunjian, Si Yuan's chest was very big. After wearing her pajamas at night, her chest was swollen. Afraid that Zhou Yiran would see her not wearing her pajamas, Si Yuan quickly shrank back into her bed. At this moment, Zhou Yiran walked toward the bed. But just as Zhou Yiran took 2 steps towards this side, he suddenly stepped on something under his feet. The moment he stopped and hooked up the thing he stepped on, Si Yuan's face suddenly turned from red to red. That was, she. She had casually thrown her bra on the ground. She had forgotten to put it away. Chapter 2659. Si Yuan was usually adorable and delicate, inheriting both Yunjian's stunning looks and Ce's chiseled features. She was a perfect girl who was both beautiful and adorable. However, Si Yuan was not as beautiful as she looked. Usually, Si Yuan did not allow anyone to enter her room, except for Yunjian. At night, she would go to her room and take off all her clothes. Then, she would go to the bathroom in her room to take a shower. She would put on her pajamas and lie on the bed to sleep. As for the underwear that she had taken off, Si Yuan would just throw them on the bed and the floor. Because the floor was covered with a furry carpet, after entering Si Yuan's room, one would usually walk barefoot on the furry carpet. The floor was not dirty. When Zhou Yiran suddenly entered the room, Si Yuan did not think too much about it. She was only wearing her pajamas and did not wear any underwear. She was afraid that Zhou Yiran would see that she had slept with him, so she kept covering herself and even crawled onto the bed. However, the moment she saw Zhou Yiran pick up the D-bra that she had just thrown on the floor, Si Yuan's face turned so red that it was as if it had been cooked. Zhou Yiran stared at the red cartoon bra in his hand. He could not react to what this thing was. Don't touch my things. Give it back to me. Si Yuan had already pounced over from the bed. She even forgot that she was not wearing any underwear. She reached out and grabbed the bra in Zhou Yiran's hand. However, because she pounced too fiercely, Si Yuan threw herself into Zhou Yiran's arms. Zhou Yiran was only wearing a thin white t-shirt. When Si Yuan threw herself into his embrace, he could even feel her breasts that were not wearing any undergarments. Ah! Get out, get out, get out! Si Yuan felt that her face was as hot as boiling water. She pushed Zhou Iran and wanted him to leave. However, Zhou Iran only then realized that the thing that he had just aroused was actually hers. Cough. I just returned the rental key to the landlord. There's nowhere to sleep nearby. Therefore, he would not leave this place even if he was beaten to death. Zhou Iran's expression did not change as he played his tricks. That's still. Si Yuan hugged her bra and wished she could stuff it into her arms so that Zhou Iran would never see it again. But before she could say no, her voice suddenly stopped. Because before Si Yuan could say anything, Zhou Iran had already pulled her into his arms. Yuan, I missed you so much. I missed you for 3 years. 3 years ago, your brother asked me to hide my identity and secretly investigate the whereabouts of the mysterious man. He said that not seeing you was the best way to protect you. I really want to hug you. I want to comb your hair for you like before. I want to bathe you and feed you like when you were young. Yuan, I've waited for you for 3 years. Don't chase me away. These words were filled with deep affection. They were not the flowery words of a man to a woman, but words that came from the depths of his soul. Zhou Iran and Si Yuan were childhood sweethearts and had grown up together. Although Zhou Iran had been thrown into the Amazon forest by Ce for a few years, he had gone through the training that Ce had given him, which was even crueler than the training that Enhan had given him. But for Si Yuan, Zhou Iran was willing. Because he wanted to protect her with his life. Si Yuan's eyes were wet when she heard Zhou Iran's words. 3 years ago, Si Yuan was only 12 or 13 years old. They had bathed together and dressed for her when she was young. But at that time, Si Yuan also vaguely knew that someone had been secretly protecting her during the past 3 years. Si Yuan's hands involuntarily wrapped around Zhou Iran's sturdy chest. She nodded heavily. Yes. The atmosphere was originally very good, and Si Yuan was almost moved to tears. However, Zhou Iran, who was being hugged by Si Yuan, suddenly said, "Don't worry, I'm sorry." So Yuan, can I bathe you like before at night? Wonderful book house. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.